Back in the ancient past of 2012, turn-based tactics games were a dead genre. The games didn't sell, the mechanics were old-fashioned and clunky, and the franchises were ancient history. But the game developer Firaxis looked at this and decided, no, it's not dead, just dormant. They just needed to modernize it. And they had just the franchise to do so. XCOM, a series from the early 90s about an elite military unit that defends Earth from a hostile alien invasion. 2012's XCOM Enemy Unknown was a reimagining of the 90s XCOM series, modernizing some mechanics while preserving the essence of what made XCOM, XCOM. And the idea was incredible. Firaxis' new take on a forgotten franchise was the perfect blueprint for a smash hit, one so successful that in 2016, they released a sequel, XCOM 2. Yeah, they weren't great at naming. But this time, they didn't have the luxury of following a previous game's blueprint. They had to expand the world, enemies, mechanics, and story in completely new directions to prove that this reboot wasn't a one-hit wonder. So welcome to the story of XCOM 2. We're going to talk about one of the most hyped turn-based tactics games in history, its complete and total failure to be better than the original, and the eventual redemption arc that would turn XCOM 2 into one of the most beloved strategy games ever made. Despite sounding like a sequel, XCOM 2 does not follow the victorious ending of the first game. It ignores the timeline where you build a global defense force, shoot down UFO battleships, and defeat the alien leaders. And instead, XCOM 2 makes the wild decision to make the game over screen canon. In this timeline, humanity lost, and frankly, they didn't even put up a good fight. The aliens took over, and honestly, things don't seem that bad. The new alien government, Advent, has done a lot in the last 20 years. They keep the streets safe, they've rebuilt and modernized the cities, and provide Galaxy-class gene therapy clinics to its citizens, freeing everybody from the burden of disease. Though even their advanced tech couldn't figure out how to get the game's subtitles to scale with resolution. Advent's leadership isn't directly interacting with the human populace, and instead relies on another human to do that. The speaker.
A small number of dissidents again repeat the mistakes of the old world.
Striking as we celebrate a benevolent savior who time and again offers only friendship and compassion.
Advent gives much to those who follow, but brutally cracks down on those who resist alien rule. And after 20 long years of hiding, XCOM seeks to return, unify those scattered bands of resistance, and reclaim Earth for humanity. Preceding the tutorial, we get a cutscene where the characters we'll meet later create a diversion so that we can land 2 troops outside of a gene clinic to retrieve our target. I get that this is a tutorial and the beginning of the game, but it is really funny to me that this super important plot-starting mission was done with a fraction of our starting combat power. We gotta have more than Peter and Anna available, right? After being dropped into the most exposed position possible, we start to learn the basics. XCOM is a turn-based game with a focus on cover. So naturally, the first thing we have to do is get our butts somewhere safer. Being the underdog, we're always going to be outnumbered and outgunned on these missions, so utilization of stealth, tactics, ambushes, and cover are essential to overcome the odds. XCOM 2 introduces a concealment system, where we begin missions undetected, and as long as we haven't started fighting, we can creep up on enemies and prepare to get the jump on them. This is a huge upgrade from Enemy Unknown, where getting close to anybody would alert them to your presence and cause them to scatter. Of course, they still do scatter after the shots start flying, besides this one dead guy. Once we open fire on the Advent troopers guarding the clinic, our second soldier gets a turn and does the same. And then the enemy gets a go, and they waste no time in teaching us one of the most important XCOM lessons.
Not like this!
No! Crasher 2 is down! She's gone!
Damn it! You can't take risks like that. Watch your flanks.
The AI is not dumb, your cover is not perfect, and soldiers will be flanked, and soldiers will be killed. This whole thing is pretty bold. The tutorial is very forceful and gives you no choice about Anna running into a bad position and getting killed, taking out literally half of your starting force. But in a way, I do think it's fair, albeit a bit heavy-handed. XCOM has permadeath, and in many ways that we'll talk about, XCOM 2 has worked really hard to make sure that permadeath does hurt, but is not an instant game over. And the game has to teach that, so this happens. Fortunately, Officer Bradford shows up to save our other troop and then tells us a little bit about Advent.
What the hell are these things?
They're us. At least they used to be.
Human hybrid soldiers. Advent's reward for obedience and service.
Now all we have to do is retrieve the package that we're here for and get out. So we learn how to fail the hacking minigame before finding our target.
Looks like there's an access panel attached. If you got me a better look, I might be able to...
And then we grenade ourselves an exit, and they really make sure we understand the soldiers dying thing as we make our heroic escape while carrying a 200-pound bag of potatoes. With the body bag returned to XCOM HQ, they begin the revival process. We get a little clip show of Earth's invasion, conquering, and the capture of the first game's commander as the Doctor performs a bit of non-invasive brain surgery. And surprise, surprise, the secret payload we were getting from the Gene Clinic was the first game's commander, who is also us.
Told him it would take more than that to keep you down. Welcome back, Commander.
It turns out that during the First War, the commander was captured, locked up, and chipped. We don't know exactly what the point of the chip was, but Dr. Tygan has managed to remove it safely. Also, please don't question who we were during the tutorial mission if our character was the one being rescued. After we're back on our feet, we get to meet Dr. Tygan. He's no nonsense and highly confident.
Dr. Richard Tygan, Chief Science Officer. I am responsible for the entirety of our research here, as well as the procedure you so recently underwent. Welcome to my lab, such as it is.
The Doctor is in charge of all the ship's research and development, including trying to figure out what the chip that was in our brain is about. He wants us to recruit more science friends to speed things up. We then get to promote the soldier who helped us evac in the tutorial. Jane Kelly is upgraded from soldier to ranger, an expert in melee and short-ranged combat. Being promoted from a generic soldier to having a class is a massive power boost, meaning she's going to be the crutch of our play in the first few missions as we get the rest of our team up and running. And finally, we enter the command bridge to talk to Officer Bradford, but he forgot to add us to his Google Home account, so the security system goes wild instead. Then we get whisked away to a new mission. Find and recover an Advent power converter to get our base online. On the squad select screen, we have 4 available troop slots, and nothing to really customize yet. So we send what we have into the Sky Ranger transport and get going. On the ground, we begin our first open-ended mission, where the tutorial doesn't make us send our people to their deaths. The power converter is damaged, and we need to reach it within 8 turns. Which brings us to a very interesting dynamic in all XCOM games. The early game is rough. Once we have a full squad of 6 leveled up classes and powerful equipment, getting to the objective in a few turns is pretty easy. But we're sporting 1 ranger and 3 guys we recruited from the local Applebee's, and we're expected to push very aggressively through the first mission. And if we fail, it is a straight up game over. Not a mission failed, we'll get them next time sort of thing, the game straight up ends. After spending a quarter of my allotted time moving forward, we make visual contact on the first enemy. Because we have concealment, I can get my troops into position and set them on Overwatch. This is a special command that allows them to wait for the enemy to act before firing on them. Overwatch is essential for setting up ambushes. You put all but 1 guy on Overwatch, the last guy takes a shot, and then the enemies scatter. This triggers the rest of your guys to gun them down. In this case, it works great, and the Alpha Strike takes the enemies down before they even get a turn. But now that concealment is broken, the rest of the mission is a more typical firefight with Advent. The basic Advent troopers in gray are just that, basic guys with low HP and a gun. The red officers are a bit tankier, hit harder, and can mark our troops to give bonus aim against them, as well as throw grenades. In this way, Advent sort of mirrors our own progression. The basic troops do nothing but have a gun, and the officers are kind of like getting the first class abilities. Though our basic troops can use grenades. One thing that makes XCOM stand out from other turn-based games is how dynamic the terrain is. Cover is essential. If you're not taking cover behind stuff, you're about to be taking cover 6 feet under. But not all cover is made equally. Basically everything can be cover. Logs, trucks, boxes, it doesn't matter. And when in proper cover, you get either 20% or 40% increased dodge chance depending on how tall the cover is. However, the enemy missing shots is not pure upside. Missed shots can sometimes hit the cover itself, breaking it in the case of flimsy things like logs, or sometimes it's worse. A lot worse. At higher character and gear levels, this would have resulted in a bad injury. But in the beginning, this explosion completely vaporized whatever this guy's name was from full HP. And to make matters worse, I sort of maybe thought I was done with the mission after taking this guy down, only to trigger the actual final group of enemies who gunned down my ranger. Was all of this a contrived event so I could showcase how impactful permadeath is, the difficulty of the early game, but also how XCOM 2 has been specifically designed so that this sort of thing isn't a game over? Maybe. I sure sound like less of a bad player if I phrase it that way. After we stabilize the power converter, I get my revengeance on the remaining Advent and then we head home. Half of my squad is dead, including my best soldier, and for some reason that gets me a rating of fair. Alright, sure. Fortunately, our remaining forces get promoted into the long-range sharpshooter and the big boomy grenadier. These promotions are random, by the way, you cannot control who gets promoted into what. While early game losses are easy to stumble into, as we get more promotion, these soldiers are going to become more and more reliable. One of these two is going to be taking the final shot of this campaign while wrapped in skin-tight spandex armor, and you'll have to wait to see who pulls off the look better. Oh, and we can take memorial photos of the dead. I'm not very good at it. Now that we have the power converter, we get to meet the chief engineer who sent us to find it.
Commander, getting our tech to talk to theirs is harder than you'd think. Lily Shen, chief engineer, at your service. You were probably expecting to see my father. In all that's happened, I'm guessing Central didn't tell you yet. He's gone.
Lily is the daughter of the first game's chief engineer, Raymond Shen. And they intentionally make this very confusing. Through the prologue and tutorial, people have been talking about her, but they always use her last name only, so we think that it's her dad the whole time until we get the incredibly minor reveal that it's her.
You feel like catching up? Shen has the archive up and running on your terminal. I heard you, Shen. When we get the thing, you'll be the first to know.
It is kinda weird, but I won't complain. It does quickly establish Lily as someone who looks up to her father's work and is striving to follow in his footsteps. She's in charge of creating weapons, armor, and supplementals to equip XCOM, and she wants us to recruit a few more engineer friends to speed things up. Basically, what I'm saying is that she is a merchant. We can spend supplies to buy things from her. After we buy a medkit, we're back to Dr. Taigen, who has a bit more info about the chip in our brain.
Observe. Tactical combat simulations. War games. The sheer volume of encounters you were processing was astounding. It is truly remarkable that you survived as long as you did.
Advent were using us as a tactical supercomputer, and the chip is similar to those Dr. Taigen had developed for Advent officers when he was working for them. So we're gonna have to nab one of those someday. But right now we have a different mission, but it's too far away for the Sky Ranger transport to reach. But it isn't a problem. The aliens may have spaceships, but we have base ships. Instead of defending countries and expanding our grasp around the world, we pilot around the Avenger. The Avenger is huge and loud and bright. The perfect operations center for a stealthy guerrilla resistance. The system does make sense though. The Avenger can fly over to Canada and then deploy the smaller Sky Ranger to the most hostile alien site imaginable, Pennsylvania. This time, we have to download some decryption algorithms from an Advent terminal. There's a structure we have to get to, a time limit, and enemies in the way. If this sounds exactly the same as the first mission, but with a different name for the objective, you are right. XCOM 2 has a few mission archetypes, and timed objective is the first and most prolific. Which is a shame, because it is also by far the least popular. And it is a big reason that many fans were put off of the game when it first released. Enemy Unknown was known for very slow and methodical play. You would creep forward with an entire squad, putting everybody on Overwatch, so once an enemy group, or pod as they're called in the XCOM community, is discovered, they get torn to shreds immediately. Firaxis didn't like this. They felt that it was overly safe and samey, so they added missions with timers to force you to speed up. Players didn't like this. They felt that it was over-aggressive and samey. Being forced to sprint to an objective isn't that much different from being incentivized to slow crawl, with one exception: randomness. XCOM 2 is a bit famous for its random shots. You've probably seen memes like this, or this, or this, and they are all true. A 95% shot seems like it's a given, but if you make 20 of them in a mission, you're probably gonna miss one. And when you're on a timer, missing a few 5% is a really good way for the game to tell you that you're not winning today. And on top of that, our soldiers are still little babies who don't shoot good. These timers can get real unfair real fast. For other people, the mission went great for me. I do think as the game goes on, the timers get considerably more interesting and fair. And the problem they looked to solve was very real. But before the DLCs dropped, it was rough. Each DLC added additional mission types, but before any of them, it was almost purely timed missions for the entire game. Thankfully, we are playing with all the DLCs, so this issue is going to disappear soon. Also, 2 of my soldiers got promoted, and we can finally start talking about classes soon. Yay! But before we can hop into another mission, we need to do some maintenance. Our reward for beating the mission was rescuing an engineer, and the Avenger was a bit of a fixer-upper when we got it, so now we can start using her to clear out the central rooms and do a remodel. Is it kinda rude to grab this engineer, and instead of letting her integrate into the crew, we send her into the depths to clear out broken and probably dangerous alien machinery on her own? Nah, they're engineers, they don't want to socialize. After we get excavating, we head to our quarters to meet another character.
Hello, Commander. The council you once knew is no more. Its membership have all sworn loyalty to the Advent administration. With one exception. It is good to see you again.
The Council in Enemy Unknown was a collective of countries who funded XCOM, and in this timeline, they're all pawns to Advent, besides the spokesman. In the last 20 years, he's had a busy life running 2 careers, both supporting anti-Advent resistance cells from the inside and running a highly successful YouTube channel.
Hey, that guy sounds pretty cool.
The spokesman can't just give up cash directly, and instead hides the cash in a cache. So if we want to get supplied, we need to move back to the world map. The core map gameplay is flying around on the Avenger, grabbing items, visiting locations, and dropping the kids off for battle. Doing all of these things takes time, and the number of things we can do increases over time, giving us a lot of options. But right now, all we can do is spend 6 days looting this abandoned colony for supplies and recruit— oh, my lab research is completed for better armor. And modular weapons was randomly inspired, so it'll finish faster. Nice. Okay, now that we got that going, we can go back to the world map and finish oh, modular weapons is done! We did get that random inspiration buff to make it faster, so I can't complain. Let's just start doing an autopsy on this corpse, and then we can head back to the world map and oh, hey, this debris is cleared out, and now we have an open room. I don't have the money to make anything yet, but let's get the engineer working on another room, and then we can finally finish scanning the abandoned colony for 3 recruits. This system is very prone to interruption. It is something that was put into the base game as a core mechanic, back when not that much was going on. But now, with all the DLCs installed, if you want to sit down for a few days to grab some supplies or troops on the field, you will be interrupted by lab researches, rooms being cleared, buildings being completed, covert actions, training soldier bonds, tech finishing at the proving ground, psychic training, missions from your allies, dodging UFOs, urgent missions from the Council, and the Chosen messing around, and of course the Avatar project. It is very telling that in our first ever attempt to grab something, we were interrupted 3 times, and we don't have 80% of these possible interruptions unlocked yet. Basically, every time that Firaxis adds a new mechanic to the game, it ends up as another source of interruption. Despite that, I don't hate the mechanic. In the end, the interruptions are almost always something interesting that genuinely feels like we're progressing in some way, which is great. But it is pretty clunky having to resume scanning the same spot for the 7th time. The system is good in idea, but in dire need of modernization. During all of that, I kinda glossed over the fact that we started doing an autopsy. Cutting stuff open and seeing how it ticks is a mainstay in XCOM, and it's one of my favorite parts of the game. Not only does it yield interesting technologies and items to craft, but each one has a nice overview from Dr. Taigen about the alien that we're cutting.
My autopsy of the Advent captain has confirmed the existence of an implant, similar in design to the unit I extracted from the commander.
These are all fantastic world building. Sometimes they're about the enemy's capabilities, sometimes discussing how that enemy has changed between games, such as sectoids becoming taller and more potent psionics. And sometimes he's just in wonder about the weird new stuff that we find. Most of the time when an enemy is defeated, they drop their corpse, which gives us the ability to aggressively science them, and later corpses can be used to craft whatever item we unlocked with the autopsy. Enemy Unknown had the motif of slowly taking the aliens' technology to defeat them, and then XCOM 2 literally is just fashioning tools and armor out of their hides, and I love it. Here we opened up an Advent officer and found a chip inside, similar to our own. confirming that our big old commander brain was being used as a supercomputer to coordinate Advent tactics against the Resistance and XCOM. Fortunately, this means that without the commander, Advent is now stupid. And I kinda love this too. I'm a sucker for any good justification as to why the enemies in the start of a story are super weak, and then get better over time. And cutting them off from their highest APM RTS player is a very fun justification for that. Now that we know the Advent neural network exists, the Doctor wants to access a live officer, and we can now construct the Skulljack to do just that. Which is something that I'm going to forget to do for quite a while, because suddenly it is time for the DLC to begin. As we head to the command bridge, we find Officer Bradford locked in discussion with Volk, the leader of the Reapers.
The skirmishers are Advent. Advent is the enemy. The enemy is food.
Try not to bring that up when we meet, Volk.
In XCOM's absence, scattered resistance cells are not the only groups that have arisen against Advent. 3 factions have coalesced: the Reapers, the Skirmishers, and the Templar, each with the same anti-Advent agenda.
Together, they'd make one hell of a fighting force. Too bad they hate each other.
Volk's Reapers were the ones who gave XCOM the intel about where we were stashed in the Gene Clinic, and they were tipped off by the Skirmishers, a group of Advent defectors. Now, as thanks for the information, we're trying to broker peace between them. And they agreed to meet in, the middle of the Amazon rainforest in northwestern Brazil? Sure. So we head to the mission in Hokkaido because nobody bothered to make the cutscene match the gameplay. If it feels like we've had a bit of a whiplash here, being given access to the open world and then instantly being pulled into a required DLC mission, you are right, but I think it is for the best. Not only does the War of the Chosen DLC give 3 new classes, but it also introduces multiple new mission types, and getting these going as soon as possible completely solves the time mission spam problem. If they'd waited until the mid-game to unlock this DLC, it would have been monotonous. So instead, it is a bit hectic, but I will take that over boredom any day. For this mission, instead of sending a full squad in, we get 2 sets of 2 soldiers, and the city is not looking great.
If you are hungry, there's more where that came from. Impressive reflexes, but unnecessary.
Stand down. We're all friends here.
Joining up with our first squad is a Reaper. This is a playable class just like Rangers, Grenadiers, and the like, but they're much harder to come by and sport some special skills. Reapers are stealthy assassins. Their concealment has a chance to not break after actions, and they sport a lightweight sniper rifle, making them exceptional scouts and flankers. And we get to give this one a whirl against a new threat, the Lost. Abandoned city missions are often filled with the Lost, which are zombies. Like, I don't know, dude, they're just zombies. The Lost come in large swarms and are attracted to explosions, making the most obvious tool against them a liability. But they're weak. And if you take one down, you get another action, which you can chain indefinitely. The Lost on their own are fine. I was never big into the zombie decade of entertainment, and this DLC came at the end of that era. I'm not excited to fight zombies on their own, but later they're going to become much more interesting. For now, they're mostly an excuse to talk about ammo. Each primary weapon has a clip size, generally 3 or 4 shots, and once you're out, you can't shoot until you reload. When you're in a good rotation of knocking down an enemy pod without alerting anybody else, you can get everybody reloaded before each fight. But when enemies like the Lost are thrown into the equation, it suddenly becomes a resource that has to be managed. You can't run out of extra clips to reload, but it does limit the number of Lost that we can take down in one turn. And as enemies get stronger, running out at a bad time can be lethal. Oh, and this is unrelated, but the Reaper has this really cool special reticle scope when targeting shots. It doesn't matter, but it looks cool. Once we reach the contact point with the first squad, we do the same, but for the Skirmishers. As I said before, Skirmishers are ex-Advent, and they're not a big fan of their old bosses. Skirmishers are a jack of all trades. They have a ripcord that can be used to rapidly move around and get to the high ground, or pull enemies to them. A melee strike that deals some hefty damage, but not as much as the Ranger, and a mid-range bullpup that can give a move action up in order to take a second shot every turn. Skirmishers are never the best at any role, but they can quickly move around and be where they're needed to fill whatever gaps are necessary. They're also badasses.
This is no patrol. It's an army.
Yes, One we do not have time to face.
Everyone, get back!
After the explosion calls a bunch of the Lost, we bring everybody to the meeting point to establish the Reaper Skirmisher truce.
Rendezvous point directly ahead. Let's try and play nice today, people.
So, Advent's most brutal captain comes to atone for his crimes.
I am no longer that being. I am free now.
Taking off that helmet does not change what you are. Reapers have long memories, Elder Cruxard. Anytime.
The way I see it, we have two options. Join forces and kick the Elders off our world, or kill each other here and now. Choice is yours.
No one has ever done that before. No one shall ever do that again.
What the hell is that?
The War of the Chosen DLC's core feature is not about new map types or about new classes. It is about the Chosen. And the Chosen are so freaking cool. We now engage the Chosen Assassin, the Elder's greatest stealth warrior, and she is no normal foe. Chosen are colossally powerful enemies that have random attributes, strengths, and weaknesses that must be respected if you want to survive. My assassin is a menace. She's a short-range combatant that gets shielding whenever an attack misses her and doesn't trigger any sort of overwatch or reaction fire when getting into position. But in exchange, I get higher accuracy when targeting her from the high ground, and Reapers deal bonus damage to her. But even with those buffs, the fight is a nightmare.
Savor what time you have left.
The Chosen get multiple actions every turn as well as a host of free abilities, and they have custom-made AIs that are significantly more intelligent than the base game troops. The assassin loves to get in, deal some real damage, and then vanish before my turn even starts, whittling me down while I have to spend significant effort hunting her. And because of the random attributes, if I mess up any shots, she becomes shielded, making her all the stronger for the next turn. Each playthrough of the Chosen brings different strengths and weaknesses, which gives incredible variety and replayability in their fights. My first fight is a scramble as I try to lock down the assassin's position, unload on her, and then protect my troops with smoke grenades. After taking a significant amount of punishment, I manage to force her retreat, and can move to the extraction point. But the damage I took meant that one of my soldiers was low, and the incoming wave of Lost kills one of my rookies. But the remainder of my troops, including the Skirmisher and Reaper, make it to the transport, so I now have 2 more classes to work with.
Time to return home, traitor.
Excuse me. I have 1 new class to work with. The Chosen are excellent. Their introduction is great, and this first encounter is absolutely brutal. With 1 soldier dead, the Skirmisher abducted, and the remainder bleeding out from their everywhere, it was an incredibly close call that makes you respect the might of this new foe. A foe who is going to be a thorn in our side for the remainder of this campaign. Now that we're back home, we can finally have a moment to relax and start getting our bearings. Oh, there's more of them. We're introduced to all 3 of the Chosen, the Assassin who we already fought, the Hunter, and the Warlock. They're all incredibly powerful and don't get along well.
Our masters have need of us once more.
Sounds to me like they're afraid.
You dare defile this place with your wretched tongue?
Oh, I dare. Our children.
Anyway, this is actually a Skype call with the Elders. The Elders scold the Chosen for sitting around while we were commander napped and make them an offer. Whoever gets us back and defeats XCOM gets Earth as a prize. Luckily for us, this means that they're not working together, and only the assassin is on our trail. For now. She's taken some of the world map and is not going to let us do our thing unimpeded. Eventually. Things are actually pretty lax at the start, and it's about time. We've been pulled around a lot very quickly, and it's nice to get the chance to settle into the core world map rotation. We get to fly around a bit, work on upgrades that power us up, and we finally have some supplies to build facilities in the core of the Avenger. There are a lot of different structures. I'm starting off with the Guerrilla Tactics School, which can unlock passive upgrades once we reach certain ranks with our soldiers, including deploying more troops onto the field. And on the world map, we can visit sites to get 4 different resources. Alloys, Illyrium, and supplies are used for buying and crafting, and intel can be traded at the black market or used to contact new resistance groups. And speaking of resistance groups...
And yet, among us, there are still those who would refuse to acknowledge the truth, who are determined to see all that we have achieved.
Multiple radar contacts on approach to Haven Alpha 7.
That must end.
Advent doesn't know where we are, so occasionally they'll crack back against our allies instead, in what are called Retaliation missions. I like these missions a lot. They're chaotic and help capture a vibe that previous XCOMs had, but XCOM 2 is often lacking. The feeling of alien invasion. Retaliation missions are packed with NPC civilians and resistance fighters. When we arrive, the locations are actively being decimated. We fight in the burning rubble of former hideouts, and instead of having an arbitrary fake-feeling timer, it's a dynamic race to save as many people as possible. So let's talk a bit about what Advent is sporting at this point. They still have the basic Advent troopers, but are also bringing sectoids, a lanky alien whose psionic powers can cause disorientation, terror, or even mind control. The basic troops get an interesting buff on retaliation missions too. They might not be strong against us, but they're more than enough to take out civilians, turning even weak enemies into non-direct threats. The Advent Stun Lancer is a new, stronger soldier who can use a melee taser baton that can stun or knock soldiers unconscious. But overall, the enemies are still fairly basic. I can cleanly move from building to building, rescuing most of the civilians. But that doesn't mean that everything is a civilian. The Faceless are big melee ambushers that regenerate HP and pack a literal punch. I really like their design, not because they're pretty, but because they do a great job at stirring the pot. It's all too common that you jump into a house or alley during a firefight to grab some cover, and then suddenly you have a behemoth right next to you, forcing you to plan on the fly. Their attacks don't hit too hard, but they can destroy cover, making them a wrecking ball that supports their allies exceptionally well. Anyway, I have a gun, so this one is dead. The bare minimum on retaliation missions is to save 6 civilians. We saved 14 here, and were rewarded with a permanent income increase for the region. We'll get to the region stuff later, but just trust me that money is in fact good. If we had let too many civilians die, the region's income would have been reduced instead, which can be devastating early on. With the Resistance mission complete, it is now March 22nd, also known as the end of the month? Yeah, we get our monthly report card every 21 days in this game, which is weird because advent calendars are usually 24 days. The first month is always rough. There are so many new things, our squads suck, and we have no money, and even fewer friends. But at the month's end, our council dad checks the report card, sees that we got straight A's, and gives us our allowance in the form of a pile of supplies on the floor. Now, we can build stuff. Unfortunately, the Chosen also get an allowance in the form of random Chosen activities. There are a ton of these, and they can be unlocked via Chosen knowledge. Basically, the longer that we let the Chosen run rampant, the more info they got on XCOM, unlocking more and more activities. If multiple Chosen are each up with multiple abilities going, it can get real oppressive real fast. And there's a lot of them. They range from buffing the Chosen's stats to sabotaging the Avenger to what I was hit with, Retribution. This decreases my income as long as it's activated, so I get less allowance than I thought. The 4 Chosen knowledge bars also have another function when maxed out, but we'll get to that later, because the monthly recap isn't over. We also get our own buffs that we can slot in the form of these resistance orders. As we play, we'll unlock more of these, and as we become better friends with the factions, we can equip more of them. Right now, I can pick between recruits costing 15 less supplies or bonus movement on the first 2 turns as long as I'm concealed. I grab the move speed because I figure it takes a little bit of the pressure off of the timed missions. And we are still not done. We get to send our troops on a covert action. These are non-missions that tie up a few of our troops for a few days. We're going to be doing a lot of these later, but for now we can pick between searching for the Chosen Assassin, sending a rescue party for the kidnapped skirmisher, countering the Chosen's income reduction ability, or searching for the third resistance faction, the Templar. I really like the Templar, so I toss these pros at the mission and they'll report back in 8 days. And then, after getting some lab researches going, I can finally move over to the Council's supply drop and get my hard-earned—
Commander, we have a mission available that's reliant on time-sensitive information. We can always finish our scans later, but failing to take on this mission could have serious repercussions for the resistance movement.
Okay, I just want to get my box. Oh well, it's fine. We're actually looking pretty strong here. In this mission, because troops randomly promote, I have 2 grenadiers and a sharpshooter, and I'm bringing a rookie that I'm hoping to turn into a ranger to replace the one that retired early. This is a generic timed mission. Advent doesn't know we're here, but the container is still gonna explode in 7 turns anyway, so we have to get there and stop them. And we meet an exciting new enemy, a turret. The turret is a turret. They don't really do much besides sit there and shoot things, but they do have armor. These yellow hexagons would provide damage reduction. Using various tools and abilities to shred armor is going to be essential in the endgame, but my sharpshooter's rifle is more than enough to punch through it for now. Sharpshooters are great for this sort of thing. While they can't move and fire their sniper rifle on the same turn, they share vision with my other troops, allowing them to outrange virtually everything. And the rifle packs a mean punch. The enemy's also getting more complicated with their tactics. The Advent Priest Psionic Spellcaster used Holy Warrior on this sectoid to give a big buff to hit, crit, and a shield, which makes it the perfect time to toss out a flashbang. Flashbang grenades have a huge radius and disorient anybody hit, preventing them from using abilities and reducing their aim for 2 turns. But the flashbangs don't do damage. Obviously, blowing up enemies is preferable against the heavy hitters, but flashing a pile of specialists and removing their abilities will be very strong for the entire game. After getting the objective, we have to clean up the remaining enemies on the map, and we learn exactly why flashbangs are so dang good. I find the final pod, a sectoid and a lancer. After missing the sectoid, twice, it charges my sharpshooter and launches a mind control spell. My sharpshooter fails his roll to resist, and if I had a flashbang, I could instantly toss it over to interrupt the ability. Instead, I miss the sectoid again, point blank the lancer, and then a 1-2 punch of the sectoid's plasma shot and the sharpshooter taking inspiration from my grenadiers leaves what I wanted to be Ranger number 2 as compost. We won the mission, but I am eternally losing the war to get a Ranger. Though the game does let me take this beautiful memorial photo of our proud hero in her final moments. Normally I'd be pretty bummed out at how I'm just not able to get one of the game's classes online. I need a short-range brawler to deal with the more in-your-face enemies, and when XCOM 2 came out, the Ranger was the only option. But now, we have resistance factions. There are 8 classes, and only a maximum of 6 troops per mission. And the resistance classes are all specifically designed to have overlap with the base classes, but not be a replacement. So I might not have an aggressive shotgun and katana-wielding warrior, but I do have this newly contacted Templar. They're different, but just as good. So stop me if you've heard this before, but the Templar are a faction of powerful psionic warriors who fight enemies with psi blades and lightning, with a leader voiced by John Delancey.
Oh, Commander, it's about time we spoke, don't you think? I'm Geist, leader of the Templar Order, but I'm sure you already knew that.
You can feel 2015's impact on this game's development, and I freaking love it. The Templar rule. I now have a very angry stabby boy, so we are going to go find some targets. At this point, we're looking like a real team. I got the upgrade from my guerrilla tactics school to give me +1 squad size. The Reaper and my specialist are now out of the med bay, and we have a Templar, giving me a well-rounded composition. The Templar is a high damage, high mobility, high durability melee warrior. He does a lot of things very well at the high price of often being in a vulnerable position. Each time the Templar kills an enemy, he gains focus, which is capped at 2 initially and later 3. Each stack of focus gives the Templar more damage, mobility, and dodge chance. And the Templar have the mobility perk. Just like the Chosen, they can move in, attack, and then move away in the same turn. This makes them by far the most mobile class in the game. And they need it, because their range is pretty embarrassing. Technically, they do have an auto pistol sidearm, but it is so incredibly mediocre that I'm never going to bring it up again. In addition to their movement to avoid damage, after this mission, the Templar is going to have parry, where they can give up the move action after attacking and enter a parry stance, guaranteeing that the first attack against them in the enemy's next turn is a miss. And once the Templar level up, they get some crazy ways to spend their focus. But for now, my guy mostly runs around cutting up people, and occasionally spending a bit of the focus for a chain lightning zap. So why are Templar not the most broken triple S tier unit in the game? Well, being melee is rough. Both because they're taking the brunt of the fire, and because it is very possible to accidentally charge headfirst into a second enemy pod, dramatically increasing the encounter's difficulty. Templar are great, but I have to use them carefully or they can cause more problems than they solve. And speaking of solving problems, here is the final base class, the Specialist. These guys have a little drone called a Gremlin, which can disperse medpacks to heal at a range or hack terminals, turrets, and robotic enemies. There's not a lot to say about early game Specialists. Healing is in fact incredible in a game with permadeath, though it is worth noting that healing does not prevent injury post-mission. If your troops get blasted, they're gonna have to spend a few days in the medbay recovering. The Gremlin's healing is just to make sure troops don't pull their best Ranger impression. Now that we have a few unit promotions under our belt, we can talk about specializations. Each unit promotion is basically a level up, and it lets you pick between 2 exclusive abilities, and the abilities always follow themes. Like the Grenadier gets explosive abilities on the left and buffs to their heavy cannon on the right. Some classes get to pick and choose the best of both worlds. The Grenadier is often shooting and lobbing explosives, so you can pick between. And the Specialist is often healing and hacking. But the Sharpshooter's tree is designed around either maximizing their sniper rifle's power or making their pistol sidearm a viable threat on its own. A rifle or pistol-based playstyle are both fantastic for completely different reasons, meaning the Sharpshooter is basically 2 different classes combined into one. So when I said earlier that there's 8 classes for 6 slots, I kinda was right, but actually it's not that simple. When you split Sharpshooters into sniper rifles and pistols, and the Ranger between the shotgun and the katana, you can have up to 10 very viable different builds all competing for those slots, which gives a lot of freedom and customization for what sort of build you want to use. Compared to the fairly linear tree that is used by the main classes, the DLC classes use an ability point system. They can buy any number of abilities on any tier, but they cost ability points. You get these both by playing well, as well as promoting the soldiers in question, and as rewards for covert operations. Each unit has personal ability points, and then you can use a universal pool of XCOM points if you want to get more. Getting literally everything on a DLC unit is technically possible, but it would require such an insane investment of ability points that it's rarely worth it. And if that unit dies, you are screwed. It's better to spread the love a little bit and hold on to some of the universal points for later when our other troops get into the system. Oh, and while I was talking about all of this, the world started ending.
Advent has been diverting considerable resources and personnel to covert facilities across the globe. The exact details of these operations are highly classified. However, they do have one thing in common: a single word that appears in all their files: Avatar.
Finally, we get to the game's main plot, the Avatar Project. It sort of pops out of nowhere, being connected to the Skulljack quest we were given, but not waiting for us to finish it before starting. The way the Skulljack eventually works is that it's basically a melee weapon that you use to impale an enemy's skull and steal the data from with a hacking minigame. I eventually do make one of these and complete the quest, but it's super low priority right now. I think in the original game before the DLCs, you probably would have done the Skulljack stuff by now, but we've been very busy. All we know is that Advent is doing something big. We need to figure out what the Avatar Project is, what we can do to slow it down, and finally, how to dismantle it. Stopping the Avatar Project is going to be pretty tough, but IRO we can do it. And if we want to defeat Advent across the globe, we need to get out of our starting zone and start expanding XCOM's reach. Now we can spend the intel resource that we've been collecting to make contact with resistance cells in adjacent regions. Each contacted region increases our monthly income and unlocks new adjacent unlock regions, but contacting regions takes time, and further away regions takes more intel unless we build radio relay stations. But contacting as many as we can is worth it to up our monthly supply income, particularly when the Chosen is still clamping down on my cash flow. Of course, everything in XCOM is symmetrical, so Advent starts setting up black sites related to the Avatar project in territory that they control. Each adds another blip to the Avatar project counter at the top of the screen. If it maxes out, we are in trouble. But kinda weirdly, the Avatar project doesn't matter much until then. So we're gonna do the bare minimum to interact with it for a very long time until we've shaved off a few of the other threats. Just like most RPGs, the world may be in danger, but we have side quests to do. Our first side quest is to rescue the kidnapped skirmisher. That way we can have almost every class in our toolbox. I'm also using the Guerrilla Tactics School to train a new Ranger because it's worked out great so far, and with the engineers and supplies we've gotten, we're starting to get a lot of construction progress done on the Avenger. And I'm using the Proving Grounds to make a few special toys for later. Each of these actions is going to take a couple days, but during that time, the Reapers need some help, and this mission is a doozy. There's a Resistance operative trapped in sewers for whatever reason, and we need to rescue them. At first glance, this is a bog standard mission. Instead of a self-destructing PC, we have to get to a random pile of meat and protect it. It's an easy idea, but the enemy has a few cool new units they're fielding. Thankfully, we can take our time here. I have the opportunity to use a battle scanner to scout ahead, meaning that I can get the jump on our new friends. These slower paced missions, where I can set up big ambushes, really do harken back to the earlier XCOM games. I can set up all my troops, fire a volley of shots, and take down the first enemy pod effort.
So many have already fallen.
From now on, the Chosen are just going to show up sometimes. And they do not make things easy. Particularly when, if you recall, the Chosen Assassin is weak to being attacked from the high ground, which there are very few of in these sewers. But fear not, the Chosen Assassin isn't the only shotgun-toting, katana-wielding warrior here. Because from the Guerrilla Tactics School, I was specifically able to train a new recruit into a Ranger, so say hello to...
They promise for clean death.
Not again. So it turns out that adding Chosen into an already challenging mission is quite hard. But looking at this mission in detail does a great job of showing how Firaxis worked really hard to ratchet up XCOM 2's difficulty in ways that previous games would end up with a game over. Instead, here, we're gonna end up with a messy, painful Pyrrhic victory. So let's rewind a bit and break this whole thing down. Starting at the ambush, things went really well for me. I blasted 2 members of the pod, leaving the officer at 1 HP and 1 trooper down. And then the assassin shows up somewhere. I'd been planning on taking this trooper pod down before the new enemies patrolled back. This new threat threw a wrench into the plan, but it wasn't that bad. The new pod has a Viper that we'll talk about later and a mech, which is a heavily armored robot with a magnetic cannon and a rocket launcher. Basically, it's the enemy version of a grenadier, but even chonkier. So I fight fire with fire and grenade them. I remove one of the mech's 2 armor because of my Grenadier's Shredder passive. And then I one-tap the Viper with my Reaper, and finish everybody else off with a volley of pistol and cannon fire. All in all, it's a good engagement and I didn't take any damage. But the map's not clear, and the danger of the operative that I have to rescue being unattended, combined with the assassin on the loose, causes me to turtle up. I can't get Overwatch attacks on her, meaning I need to sit out in the open if I want a chance at a counterattack. So I bait her out. She stuns one of my Grenadiers, summons a zombie because that's a thing she can do now, and then bolts. Thankfully, I always carry a second Grenadier, so I get to make use of this game's destructible terrain to turn her hiding spot into an opening. And at this point, things are looking great. I've taken minimal damage, the assassin is vulnerable, 2 pods are down. So my Ranger misses an 88% sword slash against the reanimated trooper, 1 Grenadier spends his turn reviving his buddy from the stun, and then I miss the revived trooper again. So I have to spend a point-blank shot from my sniper to finish it off. In retrospect, I probably should have unloaded on the Chosen, but my hit rates weren't great, and remember, every time I miss, she gets shields. It's a tough cost benefit. So I turtle up again, She gets another great hit, this time on my Ranger, and I realize I don't actually have to beat her. In fact, there's very little benefit to doing so. I'm here to get the VIP out, so that's what I'm gonna do. After reaching the target, we have to hold for 3 turns until extraction, while waves of advent start dropping from both sides. I huddle all my troops in this office besides my stunned ranger, and the assassin, instead of killing people, moves to the stunned ranger and performs the action Extract Knowledge, whose ramifications we will talk about later, and then peace out. Remember, the Chosen don't care about killing XCOM on the field. Random chaff soldiers are not their concern. They care about finding the Avenger and getting to us before their siblings can. And this is a really interesting way for XCOM to put immensely difficult game pieces on the board. The assassin can run around like a wrecking ball, cause real, tangible harm, and then depart without ending the game. At a glance, this might seem like a cop-out, the game pulling its punches. But in reality, the knowledge she gained here is later down the line going to put me at very real risk of losing the game, and will directly cause the death of my undisputed best soldier. From her perspective, that's way better than taking down a few low-level troops. In the moment-to-moment, having the knowledge extracted feels like a reprieve, a small price to pay for getting the Chosen off of my back. But in the larger metascope, it makes the Chosen feel like an intelligent threat who are not just murder machines, but are cunning foes who are seeking the ultimate victory. And that is just so freaking cool. The Chosen just genuinely rock and are without a doubt the best part of the game. The remainder of the holdout is mostly fine. Sectoids and Advent drop in, the extraction point becomes available, the Ranger needs life alert, and then the remainder get out with the VIP. I won the mission, but the Chosen gain knowledge, bringing them ever closer to filling all 4 bars, and my Grenadiers need a nice long trip to the medbay. And we need a shovel for another Ranger. In my opinion, this is where XCOM 2 rises above and beyond its predecessors, the granularity of the wins. In the earliest games in the series, soldiers did level up, but they were mostly bundles of stats. As they got better, accuracy, number of actions per turn, and the like would go up, but they didn't get any specialized abilities. If one died, honestly the biggest loss was gear. Enemy Unknown added more RPG elements to leveling up soldiers, classes, and abilities. But these caused a bit of an issue. It naturally drew players towards investing a lot into specific characters. And then if something went wrong and a character died, it often ended up with the dominoes falling, an entire squad wiping, and the game being essentially over in an instant. This was such a prevalent problem that it's literally the basis for this game's plot. Remember, we're in a timeline where XCOM got wiped out early. XCOM 2's mechanics, like the Chosen and more that we'll talk about later, make the battlefield very lethal, but also more recoverable. You can lose individual soldiers, and it hurts far more than the original XCOM games, but isn't nearly as likely to trigger a total party kill and game over like Enemy Unknown. There's so much granularity, so many close calls and narrow escapes, and often those are the most memorable parts of a playthrough. When everything is falling apart, the world is on fire, and you barely manage to thread the needle and make it all work. It is exceptionally hard to balance making you care about your individual soldiers and having a game with permadeath, and this game hits a very good balance between the two. Throughout this retrospective, I'm trying to draw comparisons between the series reboot XCOM Enemy Unknown and the changes that 2 brought, for better and for worse. But remember, Enemy Unknown itself is a reboot of an old franchise, so I figure we should take a moment to talk about the origins of the series. Before its acquisition in 2022, XCOM was known as wrong XCOM. In 1994, the developer Julian Gollop at Mythos Games worked with Microprose, the same studio that made Civilization 1 and 2, to release a game called XCOM UFO Defense in North America, and UFO Enemy Unknown in the rest of the world. And yes, this is very confusing. XCOM UFO Defense and UFO Enemy Unknown are one game, but XCOM Enemy Unknown is the reboot from 2012. The naming may be confusing, but the game on the other hand was really good and also very confusing. A lot of the same XCOM ideas were present, but taken to the nth degree. You make a squad and order them around, blow up the environment, and kill aliens. But instead of max squad size of 6, try 26. And instead of each unit having up to 1 move and standard action per turn, they had up to 80 time units, with every movement, rotation, crouching, shooting, reloading, and interacting with the environment taking a varied number of these time units. Instead of a global base, you had a global network of bases. Weapons had different firing modes, with different accuracies, and of course different TU costs. Bullets were physical objects, with misses leading to random destruction, other enemies being hit, or even your own allies if they were accidentally in the new line of fire. Oh, and the game had tanks, which was awesome. The first XCOM is an incredible, complicated, and incredibly complicated game. Being a cross between turn-based tactics and 4X meant it was the perfect novel experience for the hardcore 90s PC gaming crowd. And the game was a smash hit. Though hilariously, I think one of the biggest reasons the game was so popular is because of how easy it was. Sure, the management was deep and complex, but the combat was dead simple. Not intentionally, mind you, but because of a bug. After you finished the first mission, no matter what difficulty you picked, the game would revert to beginner difficulty and just not tell you. Of course, because the series had no history and the internet was in its infancy, people just didn't know. The real hardcore gamers complained that XCOM was too easy, but it was incredibly accessible for everybody else despite the complexity. So anyway, the game sold well, so they made a sequel, XCOM Terror of the Deep, where the aliens invaded the oceans. So XCOM needed a naval reskin of the same game, but this time with a properly working difficulty. So then everybody complained it was too hard. It was a good game though, and the reviews are really funny. Basically, everybody gushes about it, and then GameStop is just like, bros, this is a blatant reskin, why is everybody so hype about this? Both sides were right though. The game was good, but it didn't bring a ton of new stuff to the table. The third game, XCOM Apocalypse, ramped up the complexity, but brought the scope back to defending a single city. This time, we had to keep track of funding, maintain a balance between political groups, and fight an AI that had dynamically shifting difficulty based on how you did. The game had a lot of cool and ambitious ideas, and was the definition of development hell. The relationship between Mythos Games and Microprose broke down, which led to a series of subpar XCOM games dropping before eventually the series was tossed into the dumpster for over a decade. During that time, Microprose's founder Sid Meier and a few others left to form Firaxis, and they made a few more civilizations. And then eventually they decided to give this XCOM thing another shot, this time with a higher focus on RPG-inspired elements, like class specializations and the move and standard action system lifted straight from D&D. I think it's fair to argue that while the original XCOM games were more complex management simulators, the sequels still had complexity. They weren't devoid of the administrative work, but instead hid it inside of building your characters and balancing your team. Oh, and there was also a shooter in 2013 called The Bureau, XCOM Declassified, and it sucked and is not worth talking about. Back in XCOM 2 land, our covert operations have finally located the kidnapped skirmisher, and now we get to rescue him. This is a small extraction mission with only 3 troops. We drop in with stealth, have no timer, and the only goal is to grab our friend and get out. So I do exactly that. I sneak around the side of the facility, find his cell, open it, grab the skirmisher, and vamonos. No shots fired, no soldiers wounded, no enemies killed. Rating, flawless. Which I kinda wish meant something. Unfortunately, the only way to gain experience for soldiers during missions is by killing enemies, which is really odd to me. Obviously, the core of the game should be based on engaging and eliminating Advent forces, but like, most missions require you to do that anyway after completing the objective. Any timed mission, for instance, doesn't care when you reach the PC. You gotta eliminate everybody on the map either way. In fact, 2 of my soldiers have died after I finished the main objective, but before cleaning everybody up. So in the rare times when the game specifically gives you a small squad, tells you to be quick and stealthy, it kinda rubs me the wrong way when it then punishes you for listening. The objectively correct way to play this infiltration mission is to blast in guns blazing and take everybody down. And I'm glad that that is an option, but in future games, I would love to see a little bit more tactical flexibility being rewarded. Anyway, welcome back, Skirmisher. You were literally the easiest rescue of all time. Now we have all 3 DLC classes, as well as a specialist, a few sharpshooters, and grenadiers that we're ranking up. Having more than the 5 or 6 troops that we can field is important because covert actions have a really nice mechanic in addition to the basic rewards. You have to pick a couple troops to send on each action, and the obvious answer would be to send your worst fodder. They're unavailable while they're doing these actions, so you want to save your good stuff for actual combat. But that's why these specific reward slots exist. Putting somebody in one of these can give them some pretty great stuff. Bonuses to will so they can resist psychic attacks, bonus aim, or even straight up promotions. And each promotion takes significantly more kills than the last, so the fact that this option just gives promotions with no questions asked means that it's really good to send your higher level troops on these actions. And if you're gonna do that, you need more than one powered up squad worth of soldiers. And that is another subtle but brilliant way that Firaxis stops catastrophic collapse with a few bad soldier deaths. Back in Enemy Unknown, a lot of players, particularly casuals, would really only level up one squad. This created a feedback loop where as the game got harder, all of your non-level troops sucked. So you would never send them out, so they would continue to suck. And suddenly, if somebody died, you were sending what was effectively a brick in to replace them. Which means that if somebody has the misfortune of, say, rolling into the Ranger class, there's already a replacement waiting in the wings. One who isn't only leveled up, but potentially is sporting stuff like the extra aim or mind that they normally wouldn't have. At first glance, it seems like this entire system is built to stress your resources more by requiring extra soldiers, but in exchange giving rewards down the line. But in reality, it's a very cleverly disguised comeback mechanism that also gives you rewards down the line. This isn't some perfect defense to team wipes by any means, but that's clearly intentional. Instead of quote-unquote fixing the problem by adding one super strong mechanic like being able to revive soldiers, instead there's a large variety of these smaller answers, each not obtrusive and they don't stick out. Covert actions look and feel like a natural in-game mechanic that just happens to push you in the direction that forces you to be a more resilient player. But there's more than covert actions and promotions that we can use to buff our characters, so let's take a look at some of those. First up are personal combat sims, or PCSs. Every character has an installable slot for a PCS that gives them a stat boost. You can get dodge chance, hit points, will, aim, or movement boosts. Some of these are pretty incredible. I love giving bonus movement to my Templar. This bad boy can cross half of the map in a turn if need be, making him an excellent interceptor unit. And basically everybody can use a little bit of extra aim. PCSs can drop as loot from enemies, be gotten as reward for covert actions, or be bought at the black market. They can't be reused, but you end up with a decent number of them just by playing, and you can chuck them onto everybody. And they can be replaced later. Most soldiers have a default weapon type for their class, like all grenadiers having identical cannons, or all sharpshooters having the same sniper rifles. These can be improved in the lab over time for everybody, but you'll also get weapon mods from the same sources as PCSs. These can be applied to a generic weapon to make it a special version that can be passed around. For example, the basic sniper rifle does 4 to 6 damage with a 10% crit chance. But you load a basic laser sight onto one, and suddenly it's got 15% crit chance, and you can pass this around to whoever needs it, as long as they're a sharpshooter, while the rest of your basic snipers remain the same. The low-level version of these mods kinda suck, but late-game upgrades are actually insane. 15% bonus to aim, crit, up to 3 free reloads per mission, 15% chance to instantly kill a target, or chances to get free actions while shooting, and more. The superior versions of weapon mods can make primary guns absolute monsters, particularly because as you upgrade the primary weapons at the lab, you get additional mod slots, up to 3 per weapon at the max tier. You can't stack multiple of the same mod, no shotguns with 3 scopes, as funny as that would be, but they still end up crazy strong. The repeater with the chance to instantly kill an enemy is actually so potentially potent that I don't use it. It is very inconsistent and can absolutely save you in a pinch, but I don't like accidentally-ing the enemy's strongest unit. I much prefer to brawl it out with them. The final combat upgrade, for now, are experimental weapons. This is a lab project that once researched allows us to construct one of each of 4 special weapons. The Boltcaster I'm tossing onto my specialist. This is a rifle replacement that can only fire a single shot, but it has 20% chance to stun the target, cannot be dodged, and has a bonus to hit, as well as just hitting hard. The cost is that single shot. It has to be reloaded every time, making it rough as a main damage weapon, but it is excellent as a piece of the specialist's well-rounded toolkit, where shooting is a great option to have, but not always necessary. The Frost Bomb is a grenade with a very tiny radius that freezes everybody hit for 1 turn, in exchange for dealing no damage. And higher power enemies only lose 1 action instead of a turn. The small radius can be rough, but Frost Bombs are top tier support powers for grenadiers, particularly against those pesky enemies that like to run away, such as the Chosen. And finally, there's the Shadow Keeper, a pistol sidearm for the sharpshooter that hits fairly hard and has the Shadow Fall ability, which gives a shot once per mission that always hits. And if that shot kills the target, then the user is put back into concealment. This is a nice sidearm for snipers, but also gives a huge boost to the gunslinging pistol build for sharpshooters, which is why I am leveling 2 of them. And yeah, as I said, there are 4 of these weapons, but actually the final one is an axe. It does a lot of melee damage and can be thrown once per mission. And this is where I would put my footage of the axe if I had a freaking ranger who could use it. So I never make the axe, but I'm sure it's great. Either way, there is a lot of customization. 1,000 small modifiers that can make or break a soldier's combat effectiveness. And speaking of break, there are also negative traits that soldiers can acquire. If you get beaten up too much, sometimes your soldiers will become more prone to things like freaking out in various ways. Like my Templar now has a chance to randomly shoot stuff when going into Overwatch. This one is a bit of a non-issue, but negative traits can be removed with time spent in the infirmary building if they're too debilitating. Anyway, I have new fancy guns and a friend, so let's go hunt some Lost. This mission is the first time that I feel like a real, well-rounded, complete team. I don't have my 6th soldier yet, but I have a skirmisher for flexible mid-range combat, a reaper for long-range damage, and a specialist to keep everybody healthy, as well as 2 grenadiers for flexible firepower. It isn't perfect because my Templar and sharpshooters are hard at work sleeping in the infirmary, but it is looking pretty decent. And this Lost mission has another new mechanic, and one that I think is pretty fun. There are 12 supply crates scattered around the map, each is guarded by a progressively stronger group of enemies. The goal is to tag as many of these boxes as possible while Advent is trying to do the same. This is another great example of a soft time limit feeling naturally woven into the mechanics of the game with a race instead of an arbitrary timer in the corner. Each box gives resources, alloys, Illyrium, and the like, which can be used for research and crafting. So getting as many boxes here is vital. And we haven't seen the Lost in a while, so fighting them is a nice change of pace. Lost units don't really improve in the same way that Advent does over the course of the game. There's not new and interesting versions of the Lost, instead they just get more HP and more damage. This can massively increase the difficulty though. Remember that Lost are intended to be mowed down. Each normal shot that gets a kill gives another action to your soldiers. When they have 2 or 3 HP, that is basically guaranteed, but now that the Lost are sitting at 5 to 8 HP, taking multiple shots to down, this means you have to be significantly more tactical with which enemies you shoot and in what order to keep the chain going as long as possible. And Advent is here too. They're sporting the Purifier, which does big area damage and makes everything burn. And the Shield Bearer can apply temporary hit points to itself and its allies. These 3-way fights can lead to some funny scenarios. This Shield Bearer was being annoying with his armor, so I threw a grenade to shred it. And remember, Lost swarms are alerted because of explosion sounds, spawning in an entire new wave that surrounded another group of Advent. If you treat the Lost strictly as enemies to be defeated, they're not that interesting. But using them as an agent of chaos and directing them at your foes is incredibly satisfying. And of course, to spice things up a bit, is another Chosen fight.
Better be careful. It's dangerous out here.
The Assassin is no longer the only one on our trail, and now the Chosen Hunter is active as well. And he works completely differently. While the Assassin prefers close quarters combat, the Hunter is the ultimate sniper. His core ability is tracking shot. He'll channel towards a target, and we have 1 turn to get out of the vision cone or we're getting blasted for a ton of damage and a bleed over time. And avoiding it requires a full sight break, not just hiding behind flimsy cover. Realistically, if you play properly, this attack will never hit anybody. Instead, it's a massive disruption tool. The Hunter sits back and forces you out of cover, making it much easier for his allies to get clean shots off. And if you do get close to him, he has a tranq shot that can daze a unit, as well as a grappling hook that allows him to quickly make distance and maintain the high ground. And if you come at him with a group, a concussion grenade will deal a 1-round stun in an area. But mostly it's about the tracking shot, and its ability to be used across the entire map, giving the Hunter a ridiculous global presence. And the grapple's mobility means that he's tough to pin down. And of course, each Chosen has random modifiers as well. Mine summons Advent priests into battle, reveals concealed units, and gets increased defense after being hit once every turn. But in return, he takes more damage from explosions, and Templar hit him harder. These modifiers aren't nothing, but they're much more middle of the road than the effectively untouchable assassin that I've been dealing with. Overall, the two chosen require completely different approaches to deal with. The assassin is an unrelenting threat that can cause massive disruption and damage, but can be found and hunted down due to her low range. While the hunter is more like an environmental hazard, a constant pressure that has to be avoided while the enemies are dealt with, and then you can get to him. Or you can be dumb like me, who tried to use my skirmisher's mobility to push the hunter back, got trank shotted and knowledge extracted. This guy really doesn't have good luck with the chosen, huh? But at least he left. And I think that was worth it, because this mission had a lot going on. Between rushing towards the boxes, the Legion of Lost running around, the Advent, and the Hunter with his priest reinforcements, it was better to remove one of the variables so I could grab as many supply crates as I could. Overall, I like the supply crate missions. Kind of like the terror missions where you have to save as many civilians as possible, having non-binary success states is nice. Getting 90% of the crates just makes you strive to get 100% next time instead of being a simple pass or fail. Pretty quickly after we get home, we get another alert. The units we sent on a covert action were ambushed. These missions kinda suck. The two troops that we sent out find themselves on a road in a city. They have to run to the other end of the map. People chase them, but you generally only have to blast 1 to 2 enemies and sometimes 0. Which, if we had a full team, is something that I would be a bit sad about, but this time it's good because fighting enemies here is rough. You're not sending a full team that's equipped, you're not prepared for this mission, and you're almost always lacking in tactical flexibility, so getting out quickly is almost always the right call. Unfortunately, I was hoping to use some covert actions to get free promotions on a Ranger without bringing them into the combat zone. Don't worry guys, everybody knows that the 5th Ranger? Yeah, the 5th Ranger is the best one, next time for sure. Everybody else gets out with no problem though. The reward for that operation is one of the 3 pieces of intel that I need to hunt down the assassin's headquarters, as well as another one of these resistance orders, and we've actually gotten some pretty good ones at this point. We used to just move a little bit faster at the beginning of missions, but now we shred 1 additional armor with shredding attacks, get 10% more experience across the board, collect supply drops instantly, and get 25% more ability points for our DLC classes. And as we continue to work with the various factions, we're only going to continue to get more of these upgrades. They're fantastic. Ever since the series began, one of the things that set XCOM apart from the competition is the destructible environments. If it isn't the literal ground, you can probably destroy it. You can collapse roofs to teach spacefarers about gravity, blast away cover, renovate walls, and remove choke points. This was a defining feature of the original games, and has continued to evolve throughout, only becoming more dynamic as new abilities and environmental hazards have been added. It adds a lot of strategic depth, particularly when combined with the cover mechanics. In almost every mission, you're the one advancing towards a goal. And not only is your own cover potentially vulnerable to being destroyed, but destroying enemy cover gives the short-term advantage, but if you're not careful, then you just don't have any against the next pack. It's an interesting cost-benefit, where you aren't just causing havoc and destruction, but tactically shaping the battlefield as you need. Every position has benefits and weaknesses, and understanding what both you and the enemy can do to the environment is really important. The destructible environment almost always feels very natural. And that's the biggest praise I can give a mechanic like this. Rarely does something explode or break or crack and you go, that's weird. You generally either go, oh heck yes, I just did a smart, or, oh, that makes sense. Now it's time to panic. I really enjoy the system and it makes sense most of the time. Though when we're fighting in a normal city, it does feel a bit weird that we're allowed to completely demolish inhabited locations despite framing ourselves as the protectors of humanity. I'm not a historian, but I'm pretty sure that declaring yourself a liberator and then destroying people's homes has never gone wrong before. Let's talk about some of the newer enemy units, because the roster keeps expanding. The beginning of the game is pretty slow when it comes to enemy variety, which makes sense. You're supposed to be learning about your units, but now some of the spicy things are showing up. Units that can completely morph your tactics around them. The Viper popped up a while ago, and they're neat. They're the true form of the Thin Men from Enemy Unknown, and they prove that the World Elite was actually reptilians all along. And they spit acid. But even more dangerously, they can use their long friggin' tongues to grab our troops, yeet them over, and then give them the old Bone Crusher 4000. The tongue ability is pretty nasty, pulling you out of cover and removing your actions until you land a hit on the Viper to break the bind. And of course, don't use area damage to free your own guys. Most of the aliens in the game have some pretty fancy stuff going on, but the Muton is comprised of the ultimate technology. Man with gun. They're a bit smaller and quicker than their enemy unknown versions, but they're still big, bulky, and have a good gun, as well as a grenade, and they'll beat you up in melee if you get too reckless. They don't do anything fancy, but they do hit hard and tank shots well. Spectres are another really freaking cool unit. They're humanoids made out of a billion tiny little nanomachines, meaning they flutter around in blobs with crazy mobility, and they always avoid the first Overwatch attack made against them each turn. And when they use that mobility to get close to one of your units, they can use Shadowbind, an absolutely wild ability that knocks a soldier unconscious and then makes a nanomachine clone called a Shadow that has identical stats to your troop, but you can kill it. And if you take it down, you get your guy back up, or you can pop the Spectre to get the Shadow as well for a nice 2-for-1. Spectres are really cool and completely new entities to the franchise. They really feel like an advancement of the alien technology between games and have an utterly unique design. And finally, the Codex. They're walking data terminals with guns. They also look really cool when they're running around, splitting into clones when they get attacked and teleporting like little gremlins that can cast Psionic Rift. This targets a big area and drains all the ammo from everybody's guns, as well as exploding in the next turn. And the clones can cast it too. As long as you move out of the rifts, the codexes are not going to be the ones killing you off. But they're hard to pin down, and Void Rift is a big disruption piece, forcing you to spend an action to reload, as well as an action to move out of the explosion. If you cluster your forces too tightly, a single cast can remove an entire squad's turn. The enemies are getting pretty strong at this point. Fortunately, that means I am also getting pretty strong because we have a specialist. In addition to healing, the Gremlin robot can do ranged hacking. And it's pretty simple. Various terminals, security infrastructure, turrets, and the like can be hacked. You get two options, generally one with a minor reward and a high chance of success, and then an awesome reward with a higher difficulty as the second option. Success is based on the specialist hacking skill, which is raised through upgrading the Gremlin and doing covert actions. For terminals and security, the rewards will be resources or disabling alarms. But when hacking enemy robots, you get the best reward of all, friendship. Speaking of 2-for-1s, taking control of an enemy robot is so clearly amazing when it works. Taking an enemy out of the fight and adding a bulldozer who just happens to be right in the middle of the enemy lines and is stocked with explosives and we don't care if it survives, it is the best of all worlds. Though if you do try to control an enemy and it fails, they tend to get a nice stat bonus, which can be a little bit of a detriment. The best robot enemies are insanely hard to control, requiring a lot of investment into hacking skill, but the reward is the best robot enemies, so it's worth the shot. And usually the easier option is to disable it for a few turns, which can be almost as good, but isn't quite as cool. Hacking overall is not the deepest mechanic, but it does create some silly moments, and we don't get tanks in this game, so stealing enemy armor is the next best thing. At this point, it's pretty common for enemy reinforcement waves to start dropping in during missions. These are another form of soft pressure where sitting around and doing nothing for too long will get you overwhelmed. But the system is pretty fair. The troops are generally mid-tier at best, and their locations are well telegraphed beforehand. It's never a surprise ambush that accidentally ends the run, it's more of a gentle push to get a move on, and slightly increase the chance that we get wounded during a battle. But to offset this, our HP has been going up. As soldiers rank up, they get additional hit points, and I've been upgrading the basic equipment which gives them more HP as well. And if we're in need for any more durability, there are equipable vests that can boost it further. These take a utility slot that I'm often using with grenades or later on specialized ammo, but sometimes there's an open slot and HP is HP. It's worth noting that all of these upgrades will still lead to an injury if hit. The game says that we're upgrading armor, but it's not like the actual armor hexagons would prevent damage entirely, and we're still a bit away from unlocking those for our troops. But how badly wounded soldiers get is based on the percentage of hit points that they lose. So somebody with 10 HP taking 4 damage has a lot less rest time than somebody with 5 HP taking the same shot. Getting all of these upgrades, equipments, and the like is expensive though, so I've been increasing my resistance contacts across the globe slowly and steadily. This gives me more income, but there's also a continental bonus modifier. Once I fill this bar on a continent by getting enough locations and get 1 relay for each pip on the right, I get the bonus, and some are pretty good. They range from instantly collecting the monthly supplies, to getting a random squatty soldier to show up every once in a while, or completing upgrades and various projects instantly. There are only 6 continents because the Penguin Resistance Faction DLC hasn't come out yet, and with a pool of over 20 modifiers to roll from, there's a lot of nice to haves, but nothing is super build defining, and you're not going to necessarily get exactly what you want, particularly because of how late some of them come online. Overall, I think the best ones are the time savers. I eventually get one that makes it take 0 time to contact new resistance groups, which starts to snowball the other bonuses unlocking, which was super handy. Overall, the Continental bonus system is not the most impactful thing ever, but it's rewarding you for doing something that you already want to do, so it's always just a nice, pleasant surprise. As I've been taking control of territory, the Avatar project has been slowly ticking up, and it's time that we start pushing it back. I head off to a facility tied to the project that will remove one of the progression pips if cleared out, so I take my best team. The current plan is to push back the Avatar project a bit and then eliminate the Chosen. Then I can focus on the main plot once the pressure is lighter, and overall things are looking great. Even advanced pods are getting melted. I outrange enemy turrets with my Reaper, and even though buffed versions of the Advent troopers are showing up, I can handle them with ease. Really, the only thing that could slow me down right now is the appearance of an uber boss monster. Welcome to the Alien Hunters DLC. Do you remember those unique weapons that we got to craft? The bolt caster, the frost bomb, and the like? Those are special tools from this DLC, to help us be equipped to fight 3 elite alien rulers. Honestly, this DLC is not super well woven into the narrative of the rest of the game. Unlike the Chosen, which fit quite well, these rulers sort of show up out of nowhere randomly. So I'm fighting the Berserker Queen, and still haven't encountered a normal Berserker yet. Very odd. But the Queen cares not. One glance at her stats, and you can tell that she is something special. But it gets worse than just being strong. The alien rulers get a turn every single time one of our soldiers moves or attacks. This makes them very active and unpredictable. I unload everything I have onto the Queen, including a frost bomb to freeze her for 3 actions, and she still manages to waltz over to my team and do her best wrecking ball impersonation. Fortunately, the Queen is melee and cannot navigate terrain well, so I manage to harass her from the high ground until she opens up a warp rift and retreats. Like the Chosen, these rulers will occasionally show up during missions to cause havoc, but uniquely the damage done to them is permanent, making us more the hunter than the hunted. I'll talk a little bit more about the rulers later, but this DLC is controversial, to put it lightly. They definitely learned some important lessons here and angered a lot of people in the process. One thing you might have noticed as I've been playing through this game is that for a 2016 title, XCOM 2 looks pretty dang inconsistently good. The art direction, visual clarity, vibes, lighting, and density of objects in the world are all really nice. There's a ton of different environments that are all distinct, and most of them look good. Just don't look too closely. If you really get up there, the models for the characters are fine. Some of the environmental textures are not great while others are stellar, and the animation can be very, very slow, particularly on your 100th time seeing the same one. But overall, I'm pretty positive on the game. I personally value style more than sheer graphical fidelity, and the game oozes style. My favorite are the aliens and their animations. There's so much unspoken uniqueness and flavor in the way that they just waddle around. It makes every foe stand out. And I think this is the common opinion these days, but when the game released, this was not the case. Because graphics are inexorably tied with performance, and at release, this game ran about as well as me in middle school. Patches improved things a bit, but more importantly, 10 years of graphics card improvements have sort of brute forced a solution, so now the visuals are more a pro than a con. But what isn't contested or debated is the game's sound design. It is fantastic. When things blow up, it is a guttural, visceral boom. When things splat, they splat good. The aliens all have cool sounds too, and they feel powerful and weighty. The sound effects are universally praised as top tier, and this is supplemented by the voice acting. There's a pretty big cast of famous voice actors, and while star-studding your game doesn't mean it's going to be better, it does mean that everybody knows how to talk good.
Impressive reflexes, but unnecessary.
Advent. Hobbit. Rockstaller. Forten.
Avatar. Just what exactly is in that vial?
You dare defile this place with your wretched tongue? Oh, I dare.
The soldiers on the field are great too. There's a large number of languages spoken and accents between the squad that are all authentic.
Ich bin in deinem Kopf. Was? No! Only the best.
I can't avoid their attacks for much longer.
I definitely got that one.
Hold still.
It makes it feel like a world-spanning organization bringing the best of the best to fight the aliens. Obviously, over time, you're going to end up hearing the same lines repeated, but that is a criticism that literally every game in existence has, so it's pretty minor. I think the weakest part of the sound design is the music, and it's still above average. The tracks tend to be very Hollywood action movie, but they are dynamic, shifting in intensity based on if you're in the action or not, which is really cool. The switch happens very naturally, so it's easy to not even notice that this is happening, which is good. Overall, it's a game that's not going to win an Oscar for best music, but it sets the themes well and acts as a strong supporting actor. It's just never the main star. XCOM 2 looks good and sounds even better. Now that we've been playing for a while, let's see what's going on with the characters. The game does a lot with a little here. The cast doesn't grow much as people during the campaign, but instead we learn more about them. The exception being Commanding Officer Bradford. He had a very similar role in Enemy Unknown, so we have something in the past to compare him to. Back when he was younger, he was no nonsense and by the books. But now, with 20 years of alien occupation and resistance, he's a bit more cynical, unorthodox, and sarcastic. You can tell he's the type of person that was used to dealing only with military people and now has to deal with much less professional allies. The original Bradford was a bit stale for my taste, and this version is more fun. Dr. Tigan was working for Advent at one of the earliest gene clinics, but as a human. He has an interesting balance of hating Advent for what they're doing and being impressed and sometimes in awe of their technological marvels. He speaks of everything very technically, professionally, and clinically. Almost like he's emotionally walled off from what he's doing. And it's very clear from a player perspective that he's all in on defeating the aliens, but others around the ship are a bit more skeptical about giving an ex-Advent member so much power. He also likes burgers.
Tell them to pose near an Advent burger menu. For science, of course.
The final character is the one that I think is the most interesting, Lily Shen. Her dad, Dr. Raymond Shen, was the chief engineer in Enemy Unknown. In this failed timeline, her father built the basis for XCOM's resurgence, namely retrofitting the Avenger. But he passed away slightly before the events of the game, handing the torch to Lily. She watched her father work himself to death for XCOM's sake, and if she doesn't have the ability to follow through and carry on that legacy, then that death will have been for nothing. What I like is that instead of the standard tropey reaction of letting that break her down and cause uncertainty, Shen is aggressively pragmatic and hardworking, pouring every waking hour into her work, just like her dad did. All three of these characters feel very different, but also very real. Each is a take on high-functioning trauma. All three characters are immensely competent and driven. They all deserve the positions of power that they're in, And while the immense pressures of their past, the alien invasion, and XCOM's responsibilities shape who they are, they manage to reach their goals and do their jobs regardless. With the Avatar project delayed a bit and the Berserker Queen retreated, I opt to attack an Advent black site. These are special missions where we have to break into an Advent facility defended by... excuse me one moment.
The ideologies of your people run counter to those of XCOM. Do they not, Rebirth?
Sorry about that. We have to break into an Advent facility defended by another new enemy, the Archon. These biblically accurate alien invaders are flying torsos that can rise into the air and fire a barrage of explosives, and then beat people up with their sticks. They're outstanding at melee combat despite the lack of actual standing. And as we make our way into the facility, we discover a morbid truth. The green tanks here are filled with people. After the invasion, Advent never stopped abducting humanity. To the contrary, whatever this Avatar project is, it requires the abductions to be brought to an industrial scale. This is XCOM's first tangible proof that Advent is not working in humanity's best interest. But we still don't know what they're doing, so we steal Advent's special glow stick and vominos it back to the lab to figure things out. As the plot is starting to advance, so are the Chosen. And in this next terror mission, the final of the trio makes his appearance.
You fall to the Elder's greatest warrior.
The Warlock is a powerful psionic who focuses on manipulation. He can summon exploding spectral zombies, teleport his allies into better position, mind control, as well as brawl straight up with damaging psionic attacks that can chain to multiple soldiers. The Berserkers make their first appearance here too. Just like the Queen, they're big balls of melee statistics, and when shot they fly into a rage. But hilariously, sometimes they'll go full frenzied Berserker and start beating up their allies during the rage. They're often meat shields, but sometimes they'll turn into accidental chaotic wrecking balls. Just don't let them punch you. They do a lot of damage. Unfortunately for the Warlock, some Berserker allies are not enough. It always feels like the third Chosen to appear is a bit underwhelming. Not quite scaled to that point of the game. 5 or 6 missions ago, he would have been a real challenge, but unfortunately for him, I was not kidding when I said the 6th Ranger is the charm. With the appearance of the third Chosen, we have to kill one. The way the Chosen appearance rate works in missions is that once defeated, they have a 0% chance to show up in the next mission, 50% in the following, and then 100% in the third. With one Chosen running around, this is an occasional encounter. With 2, it's a common occurrence, and with 3, it's a lifestyle. And this constant pressure makes things compound. Soldiers get injured more often, worse troops have to sub in, and eventually we start to buckle under the pressure and people start dying. But there is another option to sub in for the wounded. What if we could just build more soldiers? The Spark is exactly that. Unlocked from either a research or a special mission, depending on if you're playing the Chosen or not, the Spark is an expensive heavy weapons platform, and as a robot, it's immune to fire, poison, mind control, and everything else you could expect a robot to not care about. But in exchange, they can't take cover, they can't carry items, and they're expensive to build. They use the same cannon as the Grenadier and can be equipped with heavy weapons like a rocket launcher. I tried making a Spark here, but completely honestly, it was just for this one showcase. They're pretty capable soldiers who can do a lot for the team, including eventually acting like a mobile piece of cover for others. But I want to show off basically everything in this playthrough, and they are too expensive to put all my resources into for a unit that has a lot of overlap with Grenadiers who I am already sporting 2 of. And all of this may be me just coping for the fact that during my Spark's first outing, the Berserker Queen showed up again, and during the chaos of everything, a Muton walked straight up to my dude, meleeed him once, and he exploded. Rest in peace, Spark, we hardly knew ye. Oh well, let's take a commemorative photo of everybody that survived to celebrate the mission.
The victory today is a minor footnote in history.
I love this game. Now that we're deep into the mid-game, enemies have started changing. All of the basic units like the Advent Troopers have been getting progressively more hit points and damage while retaining the same abilities. This is true for the basic enemies as well as the Chosen. And everybody also gets visual upgrades during this. For example, if you look really closely, this is actually an upgraded Advent mech. You may have not recognized it because of the red arm. Keeping the lower tier enemies somewhat relevant is a nice way to make sure that the special high tier opponents are not spammed in the end of the game. They stay special. And we're also getting some special new gear in the form of armor. There are 2 evolution cycles of crafted armor, the light and the heavy variants. The light spider suit gives the same durability as the default armor, but comes with some bonus chance to dodge as well as a grappling hook. And the upgraded light armor, the Wraith suit, gives a once per mission cloak that gives you the ability to walk through walls. Which, honestly, I never get any use out of. I am way too much of a coward to rely on dodge to avoid damage, and I am a big fan of the heavy armor alternative, the exosuit. These big bad boys give bonus HP and armor hexagons, and on top of things, have a mounted heavy weapon. The default option is a long-range rocket launcher, but you can craft a flamethrower or cone damage shredder cannon too. But for now, the default rocket launcher will do. It's exceptionally long-ranged, gives everybody access to area damage, terrain damage, and armor shredding. The Wraith suit may let you walk through walls, but the exosuit lets you remove them. The Exo and its upgraded variant, the War Suit, are why I'm not super big on the Spark. They provide almost the same utility, but strapped on a soldier who can still take cover and can be any class. So I'd say that the Spark is good, but the heavy armor is great, and they both compete for the same rare Illyrium core as resource to craft. But there are some unique armors in the game too. In this mission, I encounter the Berserker Queen for the 3rd time. She has very few hit points remaining, so our final encounter is brief, and I get her corpse, which I can then fashion into my reward, the Rage Suit. It is very similar statistically to the exosuit, but gives a bit more mobility, and in addition to the heavy weapon, I get a once per mission melee attack. It is good armor, but it's not that exciting. Unfortunately, that is one of the capstone pieces of the Alien Hunters DLC. So let's talk a bit about this DLC that is currently sitting at 39% positive ratings on Steam. What went wrong? Alien Hunters was Firaxis's first attempt at putting boss monsters into the game. And as we will see later, not even the main quest has actual bosses at the end, so this was a big undertaking. The weapons you get to craft early on are pretty cool. Most of them are good, and having some unique non-standard options gives them all an interesting niche. The problem comes from the rulers themselves. The story mission that introduces them can appear very, very early in a playthrough, and if you don't know what you're getting into and give it a spin, then you simply don't have the firepower to force a ruler back, and you will lose your entire squad. The snowball potential of rulers getting an action every time you move or attack means that encounters too early are just a guaranteed team wipe as a juggernaut runs around at Mach 20 turning your forces into an XCOM smoothie. And the keen-eared among you are probably going, wait, you said story mission that unlocks them? You didn't play a story mission that unlocked them, they just sort of appeared randomly. And yup. When you start a War of the Chosen playthrough, it defaults to integrated DLC mode, claiming that it seamlessly integrates the past DLCs into this final product. In reality, it just cuts both of the DLC introductions off and randomly throws these bosses at you way later than originally intended, so they're all free wins. It also takes away a free spark that you're supposed to get, so you have to pay for it yourself. All of this for a piece of armor that is technically an upgrade, but is not particularly exciting nor special, and is very, very ugly. The idea is cool, the rewards from the other 2 bosses are better, but the sloppy execution means that the appearance of the ruler either marks the end of a playthrough or a double-decker nothing burger with a side of uninspired loot. So Alien Hunters is a greatly disliked DLC, but it was also massively important. Because Firaxis didn't double down. They didn't dig their heels in and declare the design is good actually and the players are wrong. Instead, they took the community's reception and feedback and used it to craft their next round of big bad bosses, the Chosen. So much about the Chosen's relentless aggression, goals loftier than simply wiping out a squad, existing outside of a few random encounters, combat design, and as we'll soon see, epic final showdowns and more interesting loot are clearly lessons learned from the Alien Hunters experimentation. So while this DLC is mid at best, I am very glad that it exists. The Chosen would have been a shadow of their current selves without it. I just wish they had gone back and retroactively applied some of the lessons they learned to the rulers, and kept the story missions in if you were playing the Chosen DLC, and made the DLC $4.99 instead of $9.99, and maybe made the armor a little bit less ugly. So overall, I am pretty dang positive on the Chosen as a mechanic in the game, but let's be very clear here. Once there are 3 of them running around, they are really freaking annoying. As I said, they're going to stop going from a rare, interesting engagement to the default for every single mission, and eventually it does start to get very repetitive. But before I start removing them from the picture, the assassin has filled out all 4 intelligence bars. And that means only one thing.
All systems check out. It's almost as if our own signal is bouncing back at us.
Perimeter alarm! It's one of those things.
That can't be good.
You have repeatedly underestimated me. I told you I was coming, yet I see you have made no effort to prepare. How disappointing. Shall we begin?
Commander, we need to take that thing out while we still can.
Let's do this. The chosen assaults on the Avenger are very special. Not only can we bring any soldier, no matter how wounded, onto the battlefield, but we can deploy 2 squads simultaneously to defend. And we need them, because the assault team is one of the strongest that the game has to offer. The map is enormous, a large open area filled to the brim with defenders, turrets, and most dangerously, emptiness. The middle of the map is quite barren, making advancing quickly dangerous. Which wouldn't be a problem were it not for the Titanic siege cannon on the opposite end of the map attacking the Avenger. If its durability reaches 0, game over. Not only are there significantly more enemies than normal, but the difficulty is higher as well. I encounter multiple new foes here. The Chrysalid are small, fast, and hit like a truck. Specifically, a truck covered in poison, and if the poison kills the target, they morph into a cocoon that then spawns more Chrysalids. Visually, I prefer the bigger Chrysalids from Enemy Unknown, but even when shrunk, I still think they're one of my favorite alien designs. They just look phenomenal. These new enemies, combined with Archons who are forcing us out of our cover, Spectres who will turn anybody who runs too close into shadows, and a ton of truck-mounted turrets to hold positions for Advent fire support makes the fight absolute chaos. The exact type of chaos that the assassin thrives in. Fortunately, I do have one tool to keep everything at bay. My Reaper. Including Sparks, there are 9 classes in the game, and most are fairly evenly balanced. But a well-built Reaper is unmatched in the later stages of the game. While early on, their light sniper rifle gives them flexibility, and Shadow being better concealment gives them good scouting potential, the late-game Reaper, when built right, can do it all. With multiple combat multipliers when in Shadow, Soul Harvesting giving 5% bonus crit rate per kill up to 20%, and the ludicrous Banish ability, which will cause the Reaper to spend an entire clip firing at one target, they have one of the single highest damage potentials in the game. A few times per mission, a late game Reaper can look at any target, no matter how strong, and decide that that's not going to be part of the game anymore. And they do so from the safety of either range or concealment. And this isn't even brushing on how important scouting is in the later game because the enemies are stronger, her ability to throw claymore mines for area damage or remotely detonate explosives around the battlefield. With the Reaper's ability to push enemies back, the assassin's dive is manageable. She knocks a soldier unconscious and then goes to threaten my backline, but my sharpshooters and specialists haven't been taxed on resources yet. She does some real damage, but we take her down. Unfortunately, that's not the end of things. The Chrysalid was not the only new enemy type. Meet the Andromedon.
This thing looks ready to smash something.
Is that an environment suit? Maybe something that can't handle our atmosphere?
This is looking bad!
Andromedon are one of the bulkiest units in the game. A heavy assault infantry that basically has to be armor shredded or you're never damaging its hit points. They have a strong standard shot as well as a mortar-style area damage attack. And I no longer have a Reaper. This was an unfortunate series of events. A poorly positioned pod, cover that has been blown out so I had to retreat to the side, and enemies with high damage rolls multiple times in a row combined with suboptimal play. But the fact of the matter is that the Reaper died here because the mission is relentlessly difficult. And it's difficult because I don't have to be here. The assault on the Avenger is not a foregone conclusion. It only happens when a Chosen completely fills their intelligence bars, which only happened because of events earlier in the run. I let her steal the info to ease the pressure earlier on, knowing full well it would give me difficulty later. Losing my Reaper sucks, but it also feels fair. It's the culmination of the assassin's efforts and one of my imperfections as a commander. But the battle goes on. Andromedon are relentless damage dealers who can soak shots, and once the pilot is defeated, their mechanical shell continues to run around, spewing toxins across the battlefield. It's a good thing that I had 2 full squads here so I could take it down before things got even more out of control. And then the final fight against the siege cannon is not much. Because this was the assassin we were dealing with, she decided to dive us early on, but the hunter and the warlock are more prone to harassing from the backline during the fight, and then engage you when you're weakened at the end. And I did let the hunter invade me out of curiosity later down the line. It is the exact same mission, but with a different chosen. Not worth doing it twice. Let's go get revenge for the Reaper. After finishing 3 covert actions, the assassin's stronghold is revealed, and I can send my best team to finish the job. Sans Reaper. I have a pistol-built sharpshooter, a melee-built Templar, a grenade and armor-shredding focused grenadier, healing and scouting focused specialist, a skirmisher for flex, as well as the final class in the game, my new Psi operative. Just like the Chosen assaults on the Avenger, attacking the Chosen headquarters is one of the most dangerous things you can do in XCOM. The beginning of the facility is cramped, small rooms filled with high-level troops. One bad move and you're getting swarmed by multiple pods. Though, I just happen to be at the point of the game where high-level enemies includes Archons who aren't able to fully utilize their flight indoors, so that's pretty lucky for me. The entire beginning gauntlet is about conservation of resources. You need to be able to push through with minimal damage taken and items used, otherwise you're going to have a bad time for the battle ahead. As we clear, the assassin speaks to us a bit more candidly than before.
Take pride, XCOM. Pride that you have come further than any of your kind. My brothers were correct. You are unworthy of existence.
I'm able to get through the base with more damage taken than I would have liked, and my med packs are used up. But besides that, I'm stocked up and ready to roll. I also got to build up my Templar's focus before the fight, which is pretty nice. Inside the Chosen's chambers lies a sarcophagus, and the path to it is a tight series of lanes with lots of cover. After cutting through a final few enemies, the assassin appears.
At last, a true battle. You have done well, XCOM. Know that you have earned a good death.
The final fight against the assassin is both a test of combat skill and preparedness. She's strong, but she doesn't do anything that we haven't seen before. She gained the ability to summon reinforcements a while back, and besides that, she remains fast and aggressive, dealing high damage and then sprinting off to protect herself from counterattacks. But this time, she's fighting to kill. She starts off invisible, so I use my specialist's scanning protocol to reveal her so I can open up with a good volley of fire. She instantly dives my grenadier, knocking him unconscious and bleeding. But the arena is small, and a few good shots from the team can take her out. She goes down, but the fight is not over. Enemies start spawning around the battlefield while the sarcophagus begins reviving the assassin. Now we have to manage the incoming enemies and start to put the pain on the sarcophagus objective at the same time. It's a tough balancing act. If you spend too much time on the reinforcements, the objective survives at high HP, the assassin revives multiple times, and the process grinds you down. But if you ignore the ads, you can destroy the sarcophagus before she fully heals, forcing her to spawn at lower HP. But then you have to fight the assassin with the other enemies. All this while my grenadier is on the ground and bleeding out, so I'm lower on damage than I'd like. The assassin returns and I open fire before she can hide, all while holding a battle scanner on my skirmisher to reveal her again if necessary. Normally the battle scanner is considered a fairly mediocre item in the mid to late game, but being able to have anybody hold on to an item that can reveal the assassin is really nice. I like it when games provide you a toolkit and then reward you for using all of it. Mostly the fight goes well, but it ends up taking too long. My grenadier bleeds out. But I managed to destroy the sarcophagus, deal with the ads, and defeat the assassin once and for all.
Well, XCOM, may you reclaim this world for your own.
Wow, that was actually kind of nice of her to say. With all 3 chosen now getting a chance to act and 1 gone for good, let's talk about their personalities a bit. The Warlock is the most simple of the 3, and what you would expect from a chosen. He's a loyal zealot to the Elder's cause, never doubting their wisdom or actions.
It is nearly time for atonement. I will bring you only pain for your betrayal of the Elders. There will be a reckoning for all of your offenses against the Elders, Commander.
He is arrogant and believes that he's the ultimate weapon of the Elders, and backs that up with his immense psionic powers. He holds no respect for XCOM, or any Resistance faction, and sees us as villains getting in the way of the Elders' plans. There's evidence that the Warlock was the first of the 3 chosen, and the reason that the Elders kept making chosen after him is either that his overwhelming confidence and devotion may have blinded him to the reality of his shortcomings, or his confidence is a form of inferiority as the Elders decided he was not their perfect final soldier. I'll speak a bit more on the Warlock when we get to him, but I always feel that they could have done more with his character. He's pretty one note. The Assassin also respects the Elders, but is far less rude. To us at least. Unlike the Warlock who treats us like dirt, the Assassin speaks very respectfully to those she views as strong.
Though it pains me to flee from a worthy adversary, the Elders will not allow me to die in this world. We will meet again.
This is portrayed in her gameplay too, where she almost always opts to engage opponents directly in melee instead of using her shotgun at range. Compare this to the other chosen who sit in the back and command armies. More than anything, she craves a good fight and is okay with losing as long as the opponent was worthy, as evidenced by her compliment at the end. And once she's lost, she commits harakiri instead of dragging the fight on. I like the Assassin. She acts as a good foil to XCOM throughout the beginning and mid sections of the game, and in a way, it almost feels like she's intentionally letting you become stronger so she could have a worthy challenge. Finally comes the Hunter. This boy is messed up.
You don't hesitate to pull the trigger. I like that. The lost are like fish in a barrel. Unfortunately for you, you live in the same barrel.
He thinks that the Elders are idiots, and he thinks that we are idiots. And believe it or not, he thinks that the Resistance factions are also idiots. He is a sociopath and wants nothing more than to kill everything, sitting back with his rifle and blasting until nothing remains. His explicit goal, if the Elders give him Earth, is to turn it into his own private hunting grounds. He even comments about hunting Advent for fun, so nothing is off limits for him. And he loves one-liners.
You're not much for subtlety. You look tired.
The Hunter is that special kind of crazy that hits just right. I think he's the least interesting chosen to encounter on the battlefield mechanically, but I am happy to see him because his dialogue is the most fun.
Always carry a backup.
He also hates meetings, and now that the Assassin is dead, he has to show up for a big one.
Even now, we feel its absence. You are born of our power. Does not our very life force flow within your veins? Yet within you, we sense something else. Arrogance and satisfaction. There can be only one explanation. You have succumbed to the cravings of your humanity. You squander our gift to you. What was hidden can be taken away. Return their commander to us while time yet remains.
So the Chosen are human, or formerly human. That is not a big surprise given Advent are already modified humans, but at least Advent is making sure that the agents of our destruction are locally sourced. With the Assassin dead, we can now focus a bit more on the main plot. And of course, the main plot of this video is the life and unlife of my Rangers. But we have finally reached the good end. The reason I was so obsessed with getting a Ranger up and running, despite reality itself bending backwards to make it not happen, was for this moment. Because the Assassin wields a sword and a SWAT gun. Because the Assassin wields a katana and a blunderbuss, which means that now I wield a sword and a shotgun, and only one class can use those. The katana hits hard, it can't miss, and it ignores 5 armor with every attack. It is the ultimate endgame sword. And the Arashi shotgun has all the stats of the highest tier shotgun with a bit more crit damage and a pre-installed laser sight, magazine, hair trigger, and stock, giving it just a bit more of everything. Both of these powerhouse items can and will last me the entire way to the end. Each chosen drops loot, and most of it is top tier chef's kiss. With perfect drops and min-maxing, you can create some custom pieces that are better, but for the large majority of players, these are well enough. And I am very happy with them. To put it in perspective, as soon as I equip these to my rangers, they stop dying. And you know that means they're good. Now I guess we should talk about the much less important Avatar project. When we last left off, we assaulted a black site, found that Advent was still abducting humans, and grabbed a mysterious vial of goo. To research the flubber, we built the Shadow Chamber building, which is just another lab, but can only research things for the plot. And while we're using it, we can't do normal research. It kinda sucks, but plot is plot. The Shadow Chamber is our final facility on the Avenger. I have slowly excavated every room, built stuff in them, and upgraded them. The base building mechanic is truly functional. There is a bit of variety on what you build in the early game. Do you want to rush for a guerrilla tactics school to deploy more than 4 soldiers quickly, or get the resistance ring going to do covert operations? But by the mid-game, it all sorta smooths out into a checklist of getting one of everything and buying upgrades for the stronger versions of facilities as money allows. It's worth mentioning that there is some strategy. For example, laboratories increase research speed if you're not finding scientists as rewards for missions, but you don't have enough space later to keep them running, so you could build one in the early stages and demolish it later. It's not the deepest strategy, but it is something. The earlier games were definitely more in-depth, with structure proximity bonuses and multiple bases being built. It required a lot of pre-planning to maximize everything. It was cool for min-maxing and repeated playthroughs, but it was bad for first-time players where you had no idea what was coming, so suddenly a new building unlock would ruin your entire Tetris. Because of that, we have the safest and most simplified version of base building. It's not bad per se, but it's also not exciting. Sorry, I keep getting off topic from the main plot. But that is the truth of XCOM 2. The Avatar project just sits there in the background as a series of squares on top of the map. Every once in a while you do a mission to knock it back a peg, and then you worry about other things. This is clearly intentional, because there's no post-game where you can go around and finish everything up. It isn't like Skyrim where you can beat Alduin as the Dovahkiin and then go straight over to being a Thieves Guild initiate stealing bees. On top of that, the Avatar project was built as a mystery. We're not given context about what is going on, so it's far less urgent than the Warlock summoning a legion of zombies into my face. Which is why, even when the project hits full boxes and we get an Advent month to push it back or instantly lose, it's kinda whatever. Even Bradford is super chill about the whole thing.
Commander, the aliens are still moving forward on the Avatar project. Taking out that facility would deal a serious blow to their efforts. Commander, we're almost out of time. The Avatar project is entering its final stages.
Instead, I ignore the timer. It is honestly pretty nice because it gives me concrete knowledge of what I can get away with before losing, instead of the more nebulous boxes. But after crafting some stuff, grabbing supplies, doing some work for the Resistance factions by rescuing a VIP, and letting the countdown drop to 13 days, I finally do a covert mission to reduce the progress by 2, and do a single mission to destroy a black site, and bam, progress at half again. So far back that I will never have to think about Avatar progress for the remainder of the playthrough. The reasons for it being this way make sense, but the Avatar project is just not that compelling compared to the rest of the game. Oh, and if you do run out of time, you don't get a teaser of like what the Avatar project was or the ramifications of your defeat. It's just a cutscene of the speaker telling you that XCOM lost. We get to see XCOM failing, but not the broader consequences of the failure. I get not wanting spoilers there, and not wanting to spend resources on a cutscene that the large majority of the player base will never see, but it is still a little bit half-hearted. It's worth addressing that I often say phrases like end the run or game over when discussing XCOM. And those phrases are accurate, but they do come with a caveat, because the predominant way for people to play this franchise, particularly when they are new, is what some people would refer to as save scumming. Basically, you save a lot and then if things go wrong, you reload the save and pretend it never happened. And that's fine. XCOM has a decent amount of randomness, and bad luck can cause things to collapse quickly. I genuinely think it's fine if people want to play this way, and the older games definitely encouraged it. Enemy Unknown in particular was very punishing on soldier deaths, and most reasonable people don't want their 50-hour campaign to be ruined due to a couple bad dice rolls, particularly if it's your first time through. So, if somebody dies, you reload, maybe back a turn, maybe a few turns, or to the beginning of the mission. What I respect about XCOM 2's design is that they acknowledge that this isn't a player issue. It's a design issue that's pushing players to act in a certain way. They could have addressed save scumming by removing saves during missions, or saving every 5 turns automatically, or something like that. But instead, they looked at what was causing these reloads, namely abrupt soldier deaths, and designed systems like the Chosen intelligence gathering and kidnapping soldiers, covert actions leveling up troops outside of combat, and having multiple classes with overlapping utility, to make these inevitable strings of misfortune a part of the story that you're building within the game, not just the reason you stopped and traveled back in time, or worse, dropped the game. It's a very introspective and humble way to design a sequel, and it has my respect. With all of that in mind, if you do want to play the really hardcore version where everybody dies and force the game to keep you honest, there is Iron Man mode. Iron Man doesn't allow you to make extra saves, instead relying on one autosave slot that saves after every single action. So if a soldier dies, they're dead. This is close to what I did in my run, however, if the game crashes during an Iron Man save, your entire save file will probably be lost, so I didn't actually enable it. Iron Man is a fantastic way for veterans to increase the difficulty of the game without artificially increasing the enemy's stats. Permadeath is exhilarating. I just wish the game was more stable so you could do it without the risk of losing your save file. But we have been slowly plugging away at things. Once the Shadow Chamber is up and running, they start decrypting the Codex brain we borrowed earlier, and it goes really well.
Our soldiers completely disabled this unit in the field.
XCOM only hires the best. Fortunately, Windows File Transfer managed to nab everything off the codex before it crashed, so we have a lead once we research it. So while that's happening, let's take a final look at all the game's classes, because they sure have evolved a bit. Let's start with our newest class, the Psi Operative. Operatives are a late-game spellcaster type unit that are built up uniquely. Instead of fighting for experience to gain ranks, they're trained in the Psi Lab facility, undergoing training to gain new abilities. There are a lot of abilities that range from stunning enemies to remotely detonating explosives, mental attacks, massive damage in a line, and even mind control. These abilities all have cooldowns and require a Psi Amp weapon to be upgraded to keep them relevant against higher tier enemies. They can also use a standard assault rifle. Psi Operatives are good, particularly against biological targets who cannot be mentally influenced, but I don't really like them. One of my favorite things about games like XCOM and Fire Emblem is the effort that you put into your teams gets rewarded. It's a long journey of building up your forces, keeping them safe, deciding on their skills and weaknesses, and then getting to crush face because of it. The Psi Operatives sit in their little hut in the Avenger training, and then just pop out as an endgame monster unit. They're good, I do use them, but I never feel attached to them like I do the other characters. Without looking, I can tell you that the auto-generated nickname of my specialist is Gizmo, Grenadiers are Juggernaut and Moose, and the Sharpshooters are Tombstone and Flatline. Because you know what? I worked hard to keep those nicknames alive and relevant. They ended up special to me, memorable. I do not know what my Psi Operative's nickname is, and I don't even care to look. They are a fine weapon, but they are much less a companion. The next class is the one that I get the most use out of, the Grenadier. They're probably the least changed from beginning to end. They start off as big damage, big health, flexible support. Their damage doesn't quite keep up compared to the monster classes, but they keep the support going strong. Armor shredding from explosives gets better and better. Holo targeting makes attack targets have a 15% higher chance of being hit by allies. Salvo lets you use your grenades or attacks and then move after, making the big clunkies a little bit more maneuverable. And Rapture makes hit targets take an additional 3 damage from all attacks. Grenadiers never truly specialize around a certain playstyle, but instead pick things up piecemeal depending on what your team needs, either helping burst down high-value targets or making the grenades even better. And the grenades do keep getting better. In the late game, there are standard damaging plasma grenades, frost bombs, and flashbangs to stop enemies, but also acid bombs that annihilate armor, gases that poison and pass through walls, incendiary that lights foes on fire, and EMP for robots, as well as landmines for ambushes. Overall, the class is really well-rounded and strong, able to take a hit, dish one back if needed, and plays fantastically with every other teammate. I never leave home without a grenadier. The sharpshooter, in contrast, is less about picking and choosing and more about specialization between the sniper rifle or the pistol. The sniper rifle build is a bit slow and clunky because it cannot move and attack on the same turn. Until later. Once we beat the Chosen Hunter and gain his Dark Lance sniper rifle, we can move and then attack on the same turn, which suddenly makes the sharpshooter a global range monster, able to provide covering fire and eliminate key targets from across the map as long as any ally can see them. Deadeye can take an aim penalty for massive damage boosts, Kill Zone marks an area and then will fire at will on any enemy who moves and attacks in it, and when activated, the top tier serial ability makes each kill during that turn restore the sharpshooter's actions, allowing them to quickly clear out low HP targets. The sniper sharpshooter is good, but it really needs the hunter's Dark Lance weapon to come into its own, which makes it very late game. The pistol build, on the other hand, gets going pretty quickly and only gets better. Because one of the unique Alien Hunter DLC weapons is the Shadowkeeper pistol, which is the same poor damage as a normal pistol, but with 15% bonus crit and 10% bonus to hit, they get a pretty good weapon early. The pistol build has a few great things going for it. First is pistols, being a sidearm, don't need to spend an action to reload, ever, and they get to shoot a lot. Return fire makes them return fire once per round when shot at. Lightning Hands gives you a free pistol shot once every 3 turns as a free action. Fanfire hits the target 3 times in a row, once per 3 turns as well, matching Lightning Hands fantastically. And Face Off fires 1 shot at every single enemy in range, which can get a bit ridiculous. Against a lot of targets, pistol damage is a bit lackluster, but experimental ammo makes the pistol shine. Ammo are utility items that can be crafted that modify your attacks, and blue screen rounds is an item that increases the damage done to robotic enemies by a flat 5. For most classes, this means a nice extra chunk. For the pistol sharpshooter, who can hit a target 4 times in a round, it means some of the toughest enemies in the game are getting melted. These robots should be able to shrug off pistol shots due to their high armor, but the Hunter's unique Dark Claw pistol ignores 5 armor per shot, meaning that the pistol sharpshooters don't even have to wait for their allies to shred the enemies first. Once again, this is a pretty late game strategy, but it is good. No matter the specialization, the sharpshooter is never going to be a jack of all trades, but they can be built to counter specific threats very, very well, once their builds come online. Rangers, on the other hand, just freaking rock. I sure wish I had them earlier. You can build for swords, you can build for shotguns. It doesn't really matter. They get solid movement and evasion and keep piling on the damage. Conceal lets them re-enter concealment once per mission, pairs great with Shadow Strike, which gives 25% bonus aim and critical strike when in concealment. Run and Gun lets you move twice and then still attack. Blade Storm is a passive that gets the Ranger a free attack against any enemy in melee who moves or attacks, including trying to run away. And Rapid Fire just shotguns somebody twice in a turn, for a small aim penalty. Unlike the Sharpshooter, the Rangers don't need the unique chosen weapons to be top tier threats. They're just great pieces of kit for a class that already does really well. And the final normal class is the Specialist. They bring so much to the table that literally nobody else can. In a game with tons of role overlap, the Specialist getting to be the master of hacking and healing and revival and getting disruption on top of all of this is ridiculous. Revival Protocol lets a gremlin drone fly over to an ally and remove disoriented, stunned, panicked, or unconscious. Scanning Protocol reveals a titanic area, letting you make informed decisions and not getting ambushed. And if you grab the Talent Capacitor Discharge, you can make the gremlin fly in and release a burst that can stun everything and deal bonus damage to robots. It is a great ability, but I never get it because the other option, Restoration, makes the gremlin fly to every squad member on the field and either heal or revive them. You know, something that would normally take 6 turns of actions to do. Hacking becomes progressively more difficult to do without investment, but some of the strongest enemies are robotic, meaning the rewards keep getting better and better, even if you go for the easier stun option instead of mind control. Hacking does take babysitting though. If you're not doing covert actions that have hacking rewards, you're not going to be able to keep up. And then you're going to start failing hacks over and over and over and over. Don't be like me. Even with the spotty hacking record, I can't imagine playing the mid or late game without a specialist. I always bring grenadiers because I like them, but I always bring specialists because I need them. They provide utility and safety that nobody else can. Next up are the DLC classes. We talked about the Reaper before she was brutally murdered by an Andromedon. Overall, they have high damage, high range, and concealment makes them one of the most consistently strong attackers in the game. And then the final 2. The Skirmishers first, and sadly the one with the most issues. Skirmishers start off amazingly strong. Having the unique ability to attack twice per turn, a grappling hook for mobility, a ripjack melee weapon that gives them so much flexibility and utility in the early and mid game. But as they grow, the utility falters. For example, the Wrath ability lets a skirmisher use their grapple to pull themselves over to an enemy and deliver a ripjack. This is a great finisher early on, but in the later stages, the risk of finding another pod who can vaporize you when you use this ability becomes way too high. It loses value. And Justice is the opposite. Pull an enemy over to you and then ripjack them. This is amazing, pulling enemies out of cover and hurting them, but almost every late game enemy isn't humanoid and thus is not a valid target. The top tier power Battle Lord scans a cone, and during the enemy's turn, every enemy who makes an action in that cone gives a skirmisher an additional action of their own. And Manual Override can reduce all of their cooldowns by 1 turn. Both of these mean that a fully built skirmisher can do a lot of things. But the core issue is that more often than not, the enemy is alive at the end of all of these things, because the bullpup weapon just doesn't bring the oomph that other weapons do. In the end, this is a game about killing people, and if your gun is not good at that, you're gonna fall behind. Despite that, I know that they're not great, but I have a soft spot for the skirmisher. I love having all the options to work with, but it does get a bit grating in the late game when they do all of their fancy stuff over a turn, the enemy is still alive, and you're sitting there thinking, dang, Ranger could have just shot this nerd and we'd be done. And the final class is the Templar. Everything I said about the Templar earlier stands true. Their damage is big, their mobility insane, and the risk of being melee only, which can lead to extra pods being pulled, is very true if you're not very careful. Now the Templar's damage is even higher, and they get some really spicy ways to use the focus stat that they're building up. Arc Wave makes your melee attacks deal damage in a cone behind the target, scaling with focus. Ghost can take the body of a fallen foe and conjure an exact duplicate of the Templar. And Ionic Storm, well... Ionic Storm is shockingly good. They also have an auto pistol sidearm for ranged attacks, which is statistically the same as the sharpshooter's pistol, but they cannot use the unique weapons and lack the skill support to make it anything more than a novelty. Something that becomes more and more relevant as enemy defenses improve is that Templar cannot miss with their melee attacks, which gives a level of certainty that can save lives. While being melee is a colossal downside, the Templar makes up for it in raw power. From what I understand, on the highest level difficulty, Templar use drops because the liabilities are too high. But for most players in most playthroughs, they tear through enemies all game long, and it feels great doing so. Another thing worth noting is that the Templar have the best high roll potential in the game. This bottom row of skills that can be bought with ability points are random for every character, not from their own class, but from other base classes. This means that on this bottom tier, for example, a Ranger could be given the opportunity to get the Grenadier's Shredder skill. If they spend the ability points to get it, their attacks will shred armor just like a Grenadier would. Most of the time, and for most classes, you get a bit of rubbish and maybe 1 or 2 interesting things. The system adds a little bit of variety for each playthrough and changes up tactics a tad. But the Templar can go absolutely bonkers with the right finds. I was lucky and got the Fortress ability, usually limited to the Psi operative. This is a passive that makes the wielder immune to fire, poison, acid, and explosive damage. For a backline spellcaster, this is a very average ability, it hardly ever comes up, but when you slap it onto a melee warrior, suddenly I can literally charge through hell unscathed, smack an enemy that explodes when killed, and get to safety with no issues. And that was just a decent find. Getting any of the Ranger's melee abilities is a game changer, particularly Blade Storm. As we discussed earlier, it gives a significant number of extra attacks. For a Ranger, it is already amazing. For the Templar who is blasting cones of destruction behind every attack, it is a world beater. Unfortunately, that is a random ability and I didn't get it, so I have no footage of it. But trust me bro, it's awesome. The entire ability point and extra skill from every class system comes online very late and is pretty random. So sometimes you get some really freaking cool classes with the right abilities on the right characters making anything top tier. Or you can be like me, and this one Fortress Templar is really the only thing you get worth mentioning. It is a hit and miss system. I touched on this a tad when talking about graphics earlier, but let's talk about XCOM's performance. When the game came out, its performance was so unbelievably garbage. This really shouldn't be a surprise. Firaxis is known for the Civilization series, which has never been a technical marvel. XCOM was laggy, stuttery, crashy, and every other technical issue that ends in Y. And that was just on PCs. Consoles were quaking in fear at the idea of running this game. Load times were abysmal, everything stuttered, and it only got worse the longer you played. It was also buggy and crashy, and the AI would derp out all the time, physics would break, triggers would just stop working, and get you softlocked in a never-ending mission. Then you're just hoping for the crash so you get the sweet release from the empty map that you're now calling home. Over time, things did improve. Patches improved stability, better hardware, improved frame rates, but there are still bugs. My editor Finlay got clipped into this wall and stuck by the assassin. That character just couldn't move anymore. I believe I crashed 3 times during my playthrough, and I had some other assorted issues. The game is now in a state where you're probably going to experience a bit of weirdness and instability, but not have your entire life ruined during the playthrough. But things like low frame rate aren't that bad in a turn-based game. It's not like it stops you from hitting your shots. The big killer for me is the random stalling. There are some very long delays after actions are well and done. It can be a few seconds for basically everything you do, and sometimes the game will just stall out for 30 seconds or more, working fine but just not ratcheting to the next turn. And then it'll suddenly snap back and act as if nothing has happened. In fact, these issues are so bad that I'm actually playing this campaign modded. Stop Wasting My Time is one of the most popular XCOM mods. It removes a lot of these delays, because they're not actually needed for the game. The game isn't doing some crazy number crunching behind the scenes that's causing the hiccups, it's just sitting there doing nothing. This mod removes the delay from shooting, throwing grenades, using abilities, getting a kill, getting into cover, enemies being revealed, and more. So, you know, basically every single thing you do in the game. Stop Wasting My Time literally cuts multiple hours off of a playthrough, all spent waiting around. The technical side is definitely the weakest part of the XCOM experience. While we're on the topic of mods, this game's actually got a titanic modding scene. If all the variety added through the DLCs isn't enough for you, you can basically have infinite replayability with the insane amount of stuff that's been put on Steam Workshop. You can do all the normal things like use copyrighted characters in your run, but there's also some complete revamps, probably the most famous being the Long War 2. This adds a huge amount of depth to the game. And the title does not lie. A Long War 2 run can take easily over 100 hours to complete compared to the 20-ish or so that a normal XCOM playthrough does. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a decent number of people were doing Long War playthroughs while watching this video. While the majority of the data from the Codex's brain is still being processed, we did find a set of coordinates. We don't know what's there, but we do know if it's a party, we need to crash it. And once we arrive, we find a very large rift structure. And it's guarded by a baseball. Gatekeepers are one of the final enemy types in the game, and expose a bit of a problem with XCOM's late game. These guys are monsters, durable orbs that open to reveal tentacles that unleash psionic destruction. They fire blasts of enemies, raise the dead as zombies, and can drain life. And we're never going to see any of this happen? Late game enemies are really tough, as they should be. They're incredibly destructive, as they should be. And if they get a turn, there's a very good chance that somebody is going to die. So the correct answer is to never let them get a turn. I had to look up what the Gatekeeper did on the wiki for this video. I had no idea. I just knew they were bad news, so I vaporized every single one so fast that they never got to play the game. It is an interesting balance. On one hand, it feels very cool to know that a behemoth of destruction is about to vaporize you and you have to drop everything and perfectly eliminate it or else. That is a really good piece of gameplay. On the other hand, the Chosen have shown that strong enemies that are harder to obliterate in a single turn but more slowly whittle you down are very engaging to play against. I think there's room for both, and I'm interested to see how these concepts continue to evolve if we get an XCOM 3. Unfortunately, where we are now, the Gatekeeper is just not that interesting. After we off the Gatekeeper, we return home with the entire psionic gate. We just stole it, and we're gonna get it running back on the ship. Also, a Ranger died. A Chrysalis walked up and one-tapped him with a crit. That's number 7 for anybody keeping count. It wasn't the one with my assassin's gear, though. Once we're back on the ship, Advent is not particularly happy that we stole their gate, and they strike back with a wave of nostalgia. A UFO is heading straight towards the Avengers location.
Impossible! There's no damage to the engines. Plus, be using an electromagnetic pulse.
Shen!
Right.
Emergency power online.
We've got a problem.
Only one?
They've just dropped some sort of spike outside. It's generating the same type of pulse that knocked us out of the sky.
Commander, we're gonna have to do this the old-fashioned way. Destroying that spike is our only chance at getting out of here.
The UFO encounter is one of my favorite missions in the game. Just like being invaded by the Chosen, we can send anybody into the fight, deployed straight from the Avenger. But instead of 2 squads at once, allies will rally out over time to supplement. There's a disruptor spike on the far side of the map, and the Avenger can't take off until it's destroyed. Advent doesn't hold back here. The map is covered in tough enemies, and reinforcement drops are constantly streaming in. This mission rewards aggressive and decisive play. Staying around too long will get you overwhelmed. We need to slam the disruptor and get back to the Avenger in one piece. Which makes this the perfect time for the second alien ruler to show up, the Viper King. I have a katana. As I said before, the rulers are kinda disappointing. This guy showed up, made a funny face at me, got sliced and diced, tried to retreat, and died. This DLC will be $9.99, please. The rest of the mission is really fun though. The disruptor is surrounded by 2 pods in close proximity, basically making a double-sized group, which is something that you don't see intentionally done very often. I end up fighting Advent, Spectres, Archons, and Mechs at the same time, trying to clean up as fast as I can so I can get to the objective while waves of enemies are dropping on the flank. Things go pretty well until suddenly when they aren't. A priest manages to land a mind control on my specialist. This panics my pistol sharpshooter who runs and hides, leaving me down 2 of my strongest soldiers. I destroy the disruptor and get the ability to lift the Avenger off, but everybody not in the starting zone will be left to die. Which means I have the option to cut my losses, but I can't take it just yet. What happens next is a fight for my life. The priest that mind controlled is sitting pretty in the back, while there is a huge mass of alien HP in front. My own specialist is charging at me, and what's worst is that the same priest starts using the stasis ability on my ranger, stunning them and making them immune to everything for a round. Normally this would be fine, but she was supposed to kill the priest, and I am supposed to leave. 2 things that you cannot do while being inside of a psionic egg. I managed to get a grenadier close enough to frostbomb the priest, stunning them and freeing the specialist, but we still have to rescue the ranger. I am not losing another one. Even as the threats are cleaned up, new priests keep dropping in, this time mind controlling my sniper sharpshooter. The priest has an ability called Sustain, which keeps himself alive for 1 turn while they're supposed to be dead, which means their numbers keep building up as they're dropping in with their mech and stun lancer escorts. I have a ton of soldiers on the field at this point for my trickling in reinforcements, but I keep getting stasis and mind controlled, making the slow withdrawal to the Avenger agonizing. And as I close in on the ending, everyone being 1 movement away from the Avenger, a priest drops and lands another mind control on my sharpshooter, and I have to jump back out to save him. The entire process was agonizing, stressful, and chaotic. And somehow, it was all from a series of low to mid-tier enemies being at the right place and the right time. Mind control and stasis spam is one of those things that if it happened more than once in a playthrough would be abhorred. A terrible experience that would make people rage quit. But because it was just this once, in just this setup, it was one of my most memorable parts of the playthrough. They almost had me, and that's why it felt so good that I got everybody out, injured but alive. These are the XCOM stories that you tell your friends about. Or if you don't have those, you make a retrospective about. These are the missions that you keep playing for. It's tough to make a turn-based game exhilarating, and Firaxis managed it. What a great mission. Remember when I said that the sharpshooter class really only comes into its own after getting the hunter's gear? Well, let's go make it after. The hunter's base is pretty similar to the assassin's, small rooms with strong clusters of enemies to whittle you down before the final confrontation. And just like before, we're taunted as we progress.
I should probably start going on and on now about how I will defeat you for the glory of the Elders. But let's be real, I just like to kill things.
Not the deepest character, but I do like him.
It's times like these I regret losing my humanity. The fear you are experiencing now must be so exhilarating. I almost wish we could switch places. Almost.
He doesn't mention it here, but there is some evidence in the Avengers archives pointing to the Hunter being a former member of the Reapers, which explains his combat style and disdain for the Elders. The final showdown is in a similar arena to before, with slightly changed terrain. An elevated center and corners, but the fight is mostly the same. We blast the Chosen, fight the sarcophagus, and deal with the spawning ads. The codexes that are warping in complicate things though. One gets off a great psionic rift, which drains my entire team's ammo as I was working on the sarcophagus. Unfortunately for the Hunter, I don't need to reload. One of his negative traits was weakness to explosions, and the exo and warsuits that I'm wearing have built-in rocket launchers. And I have a rift of my own.
Have to admit, didn't see this one coming. So, this is what it feels like to be afraid. Not my style.
The Hunter was not as tough as the Assassin, but still had a couple tricks up his sleeve. The fight was fun. With his defeat, things start going crazy for me. The sharpshooter builds are now online, my Ranger just hit the highest rank of Colonel, and the Psi Operative has all of their abilities unlocked. We've hit the capstone of every build, and the aliens are hard-pressed to compete. They do field their final endgame units, namely the Sectopod, who's the ultimate robotic foe and almost as tall as I am. They're hulking juggernauts that serve as the alien equivalent of a tank. Just like the Gatekeepers, they are must-kills, but unfortunately they have a big weakness. Wrath Cannon is a monster attack that charges for 1 turn and basically kills anything in a giant area. But late into the game of XCOM 2, stunning yourself for an entire turn is the worst thing you can possibly do. When they don't use Wrath Cannon, Sectopods are formidable foes. When they do, they are the cool new target dummy to test your newest skills on. We also have a final alien ruler to fight, the Archon King. And he actually has some pretty strong stuff going on for him. Just like the normal Archon, he flies into the air and then launches a volley of rockets that land on his next turn. For Archons, this is really easy to dodge, but remember, the leader gets a turn anytime I move or attack. So as I learn this interaction in real time, he gets a doozy of a shot off. Unfortunately, that is where it ends. I wanted to see if I could box him in to stop him from rifting away, but unfortunately it's a no-go. And the next time that I find him, he died without doing much of anything, concluding the leader's DLC and getting me my final piece of unique armor. I now have top tier gear for everybody besides the Psi operative. To craft the highest tier Psi amp, I need Gatekeeper shells, the corpse dropped from Gatekeepers. I need one for the Psi amp research and then one for the crafting. And I just don't get lucky. Corpses only drop on missions where you don't use a Sky Ranger to leave, which is random. For me, Gatekeepers just never showed up in other missions, so I don't get the highest tier operative loot. But that's fine. I know a special Scion who drops some unique loot that we can use instead. But to attack the Warlock, it takes a few covert actions, so let's continue on the Avatar project as we wait. First up is another nostalgic mission, a crashed UFO. This was a hallmark of Enemy Unknown. You shoot down invading UFOs and then send a team in and loot it for parts. We make sure to do the tried and true landing in Canada to avoid Pennsylvania maneuver, laugh at the sectopod who cannot stand up properly inside of the ship, and then nuke 3 guys with 1 psionic lance and grab the massive amounts of loot. This wasn't actually part of the Avatar project missions, I just like looting the UFO for old time's sake. After that, we finally finish researching the goo tube that we stole half a campaign ago, and learn a disturbing truth.
I truly hope those gruesome images are the worst of what we find today.
They're slaughtering us, Doctor. What could be worse?
We're about to find out.
Genetic sequences in near infinite combinations.
Which is why we need the ship's computer to find out where they came from. It's an admission file from one of the gene therapy clinics.
Avatar. Just what exactly is in that vial?
In my worst nightmares, I would never have imagined. I believe we have found the missing civilians.
That's impossible.
The gene clinics. Millions of people just looking for help.
Medically screened and selected. Suitable candidates taken to that contemptible facility to be processed.
It's genocide, Doctor. And these people are walking right into it. We may not know what they're doing with this stuff, but I think I can find out where it's going. Got it. It's a high-security production facility.
We still don't know why, but the aliens are using the gene clinics touted as life-saving technology to screen human candidates and abduct those who have the genes that they're looking for, turning them into goo. We learn of another black site where all of this is happening, so we make our move.
Heretics, come forth!
Okay, buddy. You do you. You might have noticed that I haven't really talked about the Chosen invasions recently, and that's because we have completely outscaled them at this point. Well, them being him now. Buddy has less HP than some of the standard enemies that we're facing. I know he's a backline spellcaster, but I honestly kinda feel bad. The wonderfully elegant design that makes the Chosen meta threats and not party killers in the early to mid game unfortunately makes them a complete non-threat in the end. Their skill set builds towards a future that doesn't exist. They're harassing a team of soldiers who can chunk half of their health per hit. Honestly, at this point, it feels like we're the ones that need a nerf. Once we clear out the Forge Black site and reach the end, we find the prototype and...
How can that be? It's just like the one... Carefully! Preserve the specimen at all costs!
Dunk him into acid, I guess. I really love games that leave terrain and battle effects, or character designs for the in-game cutscenes. It's so silly when your residual effects mess up a scene, or your character is looking like a dweeb while the story is trying to be serious. Thankfully, the specimen also rolled the fortress upgrade, making it immune to acid, so it's okay. Before we move on to the final few missions, we have a few loose ends to tie up.
At long last, I hear their voice unobstructed. They are so near.
That's it. I killed the Warlock. There is literally nothing to say about this fight. I mowed him down before he got in action, killed the sarcophagus, and then vaporized him. He did nothing. It is unfortunate, honestly. The Chosen start off as an absolute incredible addition to the game. They're powerful, intimidating, and morph your early compositions and decisions to deal with them. The mid-game brings the threat of being ground down by their relentless pressure, but the cracks in their design also begin to show. Their intrusions start to become repetitive and routine. You get better at fighting them. You know their moves, your skills, and your gear gets better than theirs. And by the very end, the final Chosen is always a joke. But at least we get a unique Psyamp for our— wait, the Warlock doesn't drop a Psyamp? Just an assault rifle? What? Why? I don't even know what to say about this one. What an incredibly bizarre decision. I know you can't mod Psyamps like you can a shotgun, but they could have given you something. Maybe it gives you a unique Warlock ability or something when it's equipped. Literally anything Psy related for the Psy guy, not a gun that he never used. Despite this, the Chosen DLC is still incredible. It completely revitalizes the game. The 3 DLC classes are phenomenal. The Lost add variety, the different mission objectives fix the timer issue, the Avenger being attacked is stressful, the killing of the first Chosen is exhilarating, the rewards are awesome, and the random modifiers that they have make you adapt on the fly and rewards clever thinking and team building. It is worth every single penny. It is just a shame that it ends on a whimper instead of a bang. While we're on the subject of loot and DLCs, let's take a moment to discuss the alien ruler's armor that we've been collecting. The Berserker Queen's Rage suit is just better than the War suit. It does the exact same things, but is also equipped with a once per mission melee attack that's nice to have, but not a world changer. The Viper King's Serpent suit is pretty cool. It's light armor that instead of the niche ability to phase through walls, gives 15% more dodge for a total of 40%, 1 bonus HP and mobility compared to the Wraith suit, and a grappling hook ability called Frostbite, where once per mission you can attempt to freeze a target, and if they're smaller humanoids, they get pulled towards you. The accuracy of the ability is bad, but in a really cool piece of design, Frostbite goes on a 2-turn cooldown if it misses instead of the once per mission charge being used up. I like the Serpent armor, and it looks much better than the Berserker meat mass. Finally is the Archon King's Icarus armor. It is medium armor. It doesn't have extra dodge like the light armor, and only has 1 armor hexagon instead of 2 like the heavy stuff. But the armor looks pretty cool and comes with 2 charges per mission of Icarus Jump, which as you might expect gives you the ability to freaking fly. Wait, no it doesn't. The name is very literal and lets you jump to a visible location. Cool. All 3 of these armor pieces are worth using all game. They just have better stats than their competition, but they highlight something XCOM 2 is lacking. The late game armor in this game is so boring. We have the Wraith suit for light, default do nothing armor for medium, and the War suit for heavy, and then the Alien Ruler variants, which are strict upgrades on each. Compare this to Enemy Unknown, where the Archangel armor literally lets you fly, Ghost armor turns you invisible up to 4 times per mission, and Psi armor was not great at defense but enhanced your psionic powers in exchange. And then there was also Titan armor for those just looking for solid defensive options. There were more options to reward more playstyles. Was flight and invisibility overpowered? Yes. Was the answer to completely strip them from the game? Absolutely not. When making a new game, you have the opportunity to design a whole new host of units and answers to allow strong armors to exist, to have a purpose, and also keep them from invalidating the game. Instead, we can jump. I think between Enemy Unknown and XCOM 2, almost every mechanic was a step forward, and armor is the glaring exception. This is the most frustrating bit of the Alien Rulers DLC for me. It feels like they intentionally stripped the armor mechanic down to its bare minimum when designing this game, so they could sell the solution in the form of a DLC. And the solution they sold was still not as gratifying as the baseline abilities from the previous game. It just feels bad. One question that's always been in the back of my mind is, why did Firaxis even reboot XCOM? They're known for Civilization, a franchise that is so titanically famous it basically prints money. Why would they take this massive risk? Civ is very different from a tactical shooter with destructible environments and characters. It isn't like they get to use pre-existing dev knowledge or systems here, they had to build everything from scratch, and for what? Well, it's pretty clear that XCOM is a passion project, and Firaxis are a bunch of sci-fi nerds. This franchise is chock full of sci-fi Easter eggs, references, and unapologetic inspiration from sci-fi and alien mythos. I'm only going to scratch the surface here, but let's look at a few. First off, Roswell. The entire franchise is a reference to the 1950s and 60s American mythos of aliens, UFOs, little gray men in the form of sectoids, all that kind of stuff. And according to Julian Gollop, the game's earliest base building, reverse engineering tech, and everything like that were direct references to Area 51 and its associated legends. Which means if there's ever an XCOM 3, maybe the Storm Area 51 They Can't Stop Us All event will be canonized. Illyrium is one of the many fantasy elements from sci-fi that has incredible properties for weight and defense. It's the core of all alien tech in the game. And in the first game, it's called Illyrium 115, a direct reference to Bob Lazar, who in 1989 claimed he was working at Area 51 deconstructing alien spaceship fueled by a mythical element 115, which doesn't exist in nature. Well, it didn't. We synthesized element 115 in 2003, about a decade after all this happened. Turns out the most stable isotope has a half-life of 0.65 seconds. Advent probably shouldn't be making all their tech out of this stuff. H.G. Wells' War of the Worlds was also a major piece of inspiration. Spoilers for a 130-year-old book. The Martians in the book invade with enormous tripod walkers, which the ultimate alien unit, the Sectopod, is a close reference to. War of the Worlds as a whole is a critique of the colonization during the Victorian British Empire, which may or may not have been the inspiration for XCOM 2's setting. Though I don't know if this one is true, it may be Finlay's Scottish blood making him insist that everything evil is a manifestation of the British. Eventually, the downfall of the aliens in the book are from bacteria in the environment. The Andromedon alien has clearly taken some inspiration from that. A unit in a self-contained environment suit that when the suit breaks open, the operator is killed by exposing them to fresh air. This also works against your average gamer. The Firebrand dropship will occasionally say, "In the pipe 5x5, which is an Aliens reference. StarCraft also makes this one. Surprisingly, they didn't riff on the xenomorph design from Aliens, unlike basically every other sci-fi property, so good on them. Vipers previously being thin men are a reference to Mark Zuckerberg. Am I allowed to say that? Whatever, they're a reference to Mark Zuckerberg being a reptile disguised as a human, and we all know it. There's also a lot of love shown to StarCraft 2, which was the centerpiece of sci-fi strategy gaming around the reboot's development. Bradford plays the exact same role as Matt Horner, and both are voiced by Brian Bloom. John Delancey as Alarak came out in 2015, and 1 year later voices Geist, the leader of the Templar, who, come on, very blatant inspiration here. Speaking of John Delancey, the voice cast includes a lot of Star Trek characters. They basically hired the Next Generation's cast to do the Chosen Resistance factions. John Delancey is Q in Star Trek and Geist here. Jonathan Frakes is Riker and the leader of the Reapers, Volk. Marina Sirtis is Deanna Troi, and voices the Reaper units, and is Volk's second in command, just like in Star Trek. Denise Crosby is Tasha Yar, and also the leader of the Skirmishers, and Michael Dorn is Worf, and also the skirmisher Praetor Mox. In the first season of Next Generation, Worf served under Yar, making this another intentional reference. The human goop that abducted people are being turned into may be a Soylent Green reference, and there's a lot of non-sci-fi references and Easter eggs too. If you name a soldier Sid Meier, the creative director of Firaxis, he basically becomes an in-game cheat. He gets absurd stat boosts and can mow down everything. There's a couple other names you can use for this too. Often when you get back from a mission, Bradford will say, "Welcome back, Commander," which is a reference to Ava from Command & Conquer. Did I make this retrospective right after the Command & Conquer one so I could pin that same comment twice in a row? Maybe, but while you're scrolling down to check, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. It actually helps a lot. We'd be here all day if I tried to list everything, and I would still miss most of the references and inspirations, so let's leave it at that. Firaxis has some higher-ups who really like sci-fi, and that passion shows, sometimes subtly and sometimes very, very directly. Oh, I guess I forgot to mention this. You know how I said that we could name people Sid Meier and make them superpowered? Well, the customization options in this game are actually fantastic. The amount of work you can do to change people's names, faces, and clothes are incredibly high. It allows you to make your team your own. I'm personally never the biggest on customization options, but I love seeing what other people come up with. Whenever you're watching this video and you see a Reaper dressed up like a clown, that means that it's my editor Finlay's footage and he really likes doing that kind of stuff. Shen has been hard at work getting the gate that we borrowed working again, and now we can send an Advent unit through it. After we C-3PO the codex from earlier, we're ready to check out what's on the other side.
It should be emitting the same signal the codex used to pass through the gateway.
Excellent. Let us begin. We've already seen the codex opening a similar rift in the field. I am sure your device will be fine.
Remember, go in, take some quick readings, then come right back through. That is definitely not fine, Doctor.
Well, we tried. Turns out they have two-factor authentication, and without that, we activate Advent's finest yeeting technology. So we need to complete research to make a stasis suit, allowing an organic unit to move through. We're at the point where we have almost every item, technology, and side quest checked off, so it's time to focus everything on the Avatar project. We have to decipher more info from the Codex and build the suit. I really want to know what the Avatar project actually is, so we're going to do the Codex first. Let's get some answers. What we find is curious.
The information I've uncovered so far outweighs the loss of the Shadow Chamber, as you'll see.
Is that an elder? Haven't seen one in at least a decade.
Yes, and I believe I now understand why. The Elders appear to be afflicted with an aggressive form of tissue degeneration, rapid muscular atrophy, to a degree I had not even thought possible.
So they're dying.
The Elders have been aggressively searching for a cure to their condition for centuries. Each time they encountered a new species, they procured what genetic information and material they required and moved on to the next world. Until now. I believe they found something in us. Something important enough to cause them to take root.
A cure?
Not that I can determine. Several key files were previously deleted as part of something called the Avatar Directive.
So the Elders, the species that leads the aliens, are dying. And they have been for centuries. So not dying that fast, I guess. They're looting genetic material from every species they come across and trying to splice it together for a cure. All while warping the species they conquer into warriors to invade the next world. Humans are their next target, and the Elders seem to like what they found. So to figure out exactly what it is they like, we need a slightly more operational codex. Codex are mid-level enemies and we are late-game players, which means the hardest part of this is making sure we don't accidentally vaporize them before we can slam a skulljack into their skull. And once we do, the final enemy type of the game arrives.
Commander, I believe we are seeing something entirely new. An alien species that has so far managed to elude capture or observation by resistance forces. I strongly advise a cautious approach.
These are the Avatar, and I really like every other alien design in this game, but the Avatar looks like somebody's Dragon Ball Z OC, a fan character for a completely different franchise that somehow time warped their way over here. The rest of the aliens have a pretty unified visual identity, and the Avatar just does not fit that. They are crafted from human hosts for the Elders' spirits, souls, brains. They don't really explain how the Elders get into them and start piloting the Avatars around. And while they may look goofy, they serve as very strong capstones to Advent's army. The Sectopod acts as Advent's mechanical siege weapon, a walking gun that can serve massive punishment and take just as much. Gatekeepers are the hybrid between psionic and mechanical, being slow but durable spellcasters who can control areas. And the Avatar are much less durable, but they host all of the Psi Operative's strongest skills, have high mobility and dodge, and regenerate lost hit points every round. From a gameplay perspective, they stand out, and their high chance to dodge attacks or graze for reduced damage makes them very hard to pin down and eliminate. But they are just normal troops, and while they might be the cream of the psionic crop, and that was fine when the game released, we now have the Chosen to compare them to, which has done a lot to recontextualize what a powerful humanoid foe should be, making the avatars feel like a little bit of a letdown in this new comparison. What I'm saying is that I shoot this one in the face and it dies, and the Elder inside explodes. So now it's time to do what XCOM does best: steal. We bring the lifeless avatar husk back to base, check out its DNA, and find the second gate key. Now all we need is a live subject to use it, and we can finally strike back.
The Shadow Chamber has completed its analysis of the avatar's DNA. It has identified the genetic sequence necessary to travel through the psionic gate. However, the gate requires more than a mere transmission of genetic data.
The sequence has to be part of a live subject. The key only works in lockstep with the signal.
We don't have time to find another one of those things, let alone capture it.
No. That part we can handle. We make our own.
So, what's the catch?
Yes, that. Without an Elder consciousness driving it, the new avatar would remain as lifeless as the one before us. While I can develop its body, I cannot create the mind to drive it.
But I can, in a way, by manipulating the new avatar via the psionic network.
You want to operate one of these things by remote control?
Not exactly. And definitely not me.
Interfacing directly with their network would cause severe, if not fatal, trauma to an unprepared central nervous system. As it stands, we only know of one individual who has survived that kind of ordeal. Of any human candidate, you are the most likely to survive the connection.
We've got to build our own avatar, without an Elder piloting it, and use the psionic network to puppet it. And we, the Commander, just happen to have a bit of experience using Advent's Psi network back when we were being used as Alpha Star. It's a big risk, but time is running short. We learn this from the Council spokesman who reaches out to give us an update. An Elder being killed inside of an avatar has put all plans into overdrive, and humanity is now to be processed immediately. And he has a plan. If we can take control of Advent's network, broadcast the truth across the entire globe, it will cause chaos. And we can use the confusion of that chaos to slip past the portal unnoticed and strike at the heart of Advent, ending this once and for all.
Broadcast the truth before there is no one left to listen. It seems we are both out of time. Farewell, Commander.
What a badass. With only the final battle remaining, we pick our teams, a small 3-person squad to infiltrate the Advent network and make our broadcast, and a full-size squad of our finest to end this, once and for all. The attack on the broadcast array is quick but not easy. There's a straight line across the rooftops to the objective, guarded by a wide variety of enemies, from higher-tier Archons to early-game sectoids. Having half a squad means significantly less cohesion and burst damage, meaning that for the first time in a while, the enemies are getting to attack back en masse. But the linear nature of the map means that there's no threat of being flanked, and each pod is easy to take one at a time. Once we reach the control room, I see the PC, and the gremlin can just fly over and hack it without clearing the enemies? Nice. Now we can disrupt the psionic network and spread our message.
Today, that trust, that belief, has been rewarded. Advent peacekeeping forces are traveling across the world, carrying the greatest gift from the Elder. A revolutionary gene therapy, yes, but so much more. This is an end to disease, to decay, to pain. The beginnings of a new tomorrow, available to all of us today. Truly, humanity finally takes its rightful place amongst the stars.
And the people are not happy. We then get to go back to the Avenger and rest up before the next part of the mission. They really sold this as a 2-parter where you had to prepare for a total of 9 troops across 2 objectives. That's what I thought was going on. But it turns out now we can take a nap and get everybody ready before we actually have to hit up the finale. A finale that will have us fielding not 6, but 7 soldiers. We also get a nice motivational speech from our boy Bradford.
All right, people. The world got its wake-up call. And now they know the truth. Advent is a lie. And their time is up. While the aliens struggle to contain our world, we're gonna make a move on theirs. It won't be easy. But you're used to that. You are XCOM. You're gonna end this.
I do really love how this has your actual soldiers with full kit in the cutscene, not just random XCOM troops. It makes it feel a lot more personal.
Good luck, Commander.
And then for some reason the cutscene ends and we get like 3 seconds of my Grenadier, who looks like thick Adam Driver by the way, looking depressed at the floor. I'm not sure what that was about, but we're starting now. As we pass through the gate and enter the alien world, the Ethereals have taken notice.
You force our hand. Yet still, we offer peace. Rejoin us, and your world will be spared.
Could you imagine if we actually had the chance to just surrender here? What a twist that would have been. Unfortunately for the Ethereals, the commander is just a puppet being commanded by me, who in turn is commanding a puppet of the Avatar on the field. This Avatar has 3 abilities. Null Lance does big damage in a line, Rift Field is the area attack that removes ammo and explodes, and Mind Control is Mind Control. He's got nothing new, and nothing Psi Operatives don't already bring to the table, but he does a lot of damage, has high stats, and must survive the mission. He also has a gun. Yeah, I don't know, dude. This game is weird sometimes. Also, fan service, I think? The final approach is filled with high-tier enemies, sectopods and berserkers, as well as large swarms of lower-tier enemies like mechs. Just like the Chosen bases, these are designed around draining your resources before the final battle. But by now, our characters are fully built, and we're bringing a lot of cooldown-based skills to the table, meaning that resource conservation is much easier. The most important resource now is health. Don't take chip damage so we don't lose stuff later. One cool thing during this gauntlet is that if you haven't killed any of the Chosen, they actually show up here to fight. They don't do anything new, and unfortunately don't have any special voice lines about this, but it is neat that they were retroactively added. Each shows up in a different location, so you don't have some like hidden boss fight where you get to fight all 3 simultaneously or something, but that's more my inner challenge runner fantasizing. It wouldn't really make much sense with their personalities. While clearing, we also find the deepest lore. The Berserkers live in the ideal 1950s nuclear family lifestyle, and we're just rudely interrupting it. This is supposed to be evidence that the aliens have been abducting humans for a long time and raising them in isolation to study them, but it really feels like we just stumbled across a husband and wife Berserker getting ready for bed. How rude of us. The remaining gauntlet is long and difficult. There are significantly more enemies in this first section than there are on normal missions. It really drives home the fact that we're at the end, and despite being distracted and in chaos, they are throwing everything they have at us. But having a 7th character here really does help even the odds. And as we reach the final room, we find the entire facility is actually on Earth under the oceans. A callback to XCOM Terror of the Deep. The ethereal elders show up once again and tell us to return to the fold, and offer us 0 incentive to do so, and then the final fight begins. The room is filled with gates, constantly warping in wave after wave of every enemy type imaginable. Our goal is to kill 3 avatars while withstanding the onslaught. When this game originally came out, I was pretty underwhelmed by this final mission. It's not easy. Hordes of enemies are relentless and the sheer variety is great, but it isn't a climactic boss fight. But now, with the Chosen and the alien rulers being part of a playthrough, I appreciate the variety a lot more. Those bosses brought unique things to the table, while this is the ultimate test of the skills that you have developed as a commander. controlling units, positioning, zoning, identifying high-threat targets, managing cooldowns, and being able to deal with the avatars, who may just be strong units, but they're mobile and long-range, with a hard-to-resist mind control that can be debilitating. They're a very daunting foe who can sit in the back, cast spells, regenerate, and hide behind infinite reinforcements. But in the end, after a long struggle, all 3 avatars do fall, with the final shot being taken by Tombstone, my sharpshooter who was with me since the beginning. Without the Elders to stabilize the Psi network, we have to withdraw. The commander uses his own power to keep the portal open to get everybody out, and then...
Okay, we just lost contact.
We will reclaim what was given. We will be whole once more. No!
Avatars are Dragon Ball Z fanfic characters. No, why?
It will follow you as it followed us. You are not ready. We must not fail.
In the final moments, we learn that not only do the Elders have the slowest acting terminal illness in the universe, but they're also being hunted by an even greater threat. But that's for later Commander to worry about. For now, the Elders have been defeated, Advent is being engaged by resistance factions across the globe, and humanity is rising up against their oppressors. XCOM 2 ends not on a pure victory, but the tide's turning. Advent is weakened, and humanity is now working together to take their planet back. From its inception, XCOM 2 had a nearly impossible task. Take a beloved franchise with an equally beloved reboot and move it forward. Doing this is always going to be contentious. What some consider fundamental flaws of a series, others consider core to its identity. And when a setting has to evolve, it will naturally alienate those who don't gel with the new vision. But XCOM 2 did have a vision. The direct, thoughtful, and organic growth of the series makes it clear that Firaxis knows XCOM, understands XCOM, and most importantly, loves XCOM. It's a game that respects the excellent foundation of the franchise and uses that as a base to build off of. And most importantly, it was a game that was willing to admit its own release was fundamentally flawed, and then put a ton of effort to iterate, adapt, and evolve. The game is not perfect. The strategic layer can be overwhelming at times, it doesn't have the creepy factor of the earlier games, the armor system sucks, and DLCs cut each other out. And yet, it's an absolute blast to play. The first playthrough is cinematic. The game has just enough variety that each subsequent playthrough feels unique without subjecting you to auto loss from bad seeds. The classes are interesting and varied, the characters are fun, and do a lot with a little. And the bosses are the best in the franchise. Firaxis had a vision, and they executed that vision damn well, making XCOM 2 an absolute treat to play. Thanks for watching. These videos take me way too long to make because I actually do research and stuff instead of just making it up and going with vibes like YouTube wants me to. If you made it this far and want to support my ability to make more videos, please consider a channel membership or my Patreon, both linked in the description. Liking the video and subscribing help more than you think too. I also stream on my second channel, Giant Grant Games Archives, every weekend. You can catch that in the description too. I hope you enjoyed and have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace.